All right, everyone. It looks like we are all here. So we are going to enter into our work session for the Hillsboro School Board. And our first item on the agenda is our equity professional development with Saide and Fran.
Thank you and welcome. We have a presentation that we're going to follow, so if we can have that up and running, that would be great. While we get that up and running, we have a series of objectives that we want to work through today and make sure we're meeting those objectives with you. Next slide. And those objectives are first we're going to look at and discuss our racial autobiography. So we're going to have an opportunity to do that and really linking it and connecting it to the work we do in HSD, your role as school board members and our cabinet level directors and executive directors and superintendent. So kind of linking that racial biography to the HSD work. We're also going to share some key terms. And we've been working with our administrators and they've been working with their staff. And we feel like it's important to all understand the same terminology, all be able to use the same terminology and work from the same starting point. So when we talk about privilege, when we talk about biases, we are all coming from the same understanding of the use of those words, the impact of those words based on our experiences, the experiences of our students and our families. So we're gonna introduce some key terms, and then we're gonna share what we're gonna present next time and the next PD opportunity. Just a recap, the description above, the foundations, connections, and supports. We talked about it last time, and those are the three focus areas that we are looking at this school year. With the foundations piece, we're looking at professional development, making sure we create those systems that will support the work that we do. With the connections piece, we talked about making those connections with our affinity groups, with our parent groups, elevating those voices, and making those connections with our community, which we may have not done in the past to the extent that we're doing it now. And with supports, we're really focused on those resources. How can we support our teachers? How can we support our students, our families, our administrators through this work? And so what is it that they need so we can move this work forward and be successful this year? And as always, we work from a set of norms, a set of working agreements. They're the same in every single session. So staying engaged, being focused, being present, completely present, speaking your truth, speaking from your experiences, speaking from experiencing discomfort. We know these conversations are uncomfortable for many reasons. So being willing and ready to sit in that discomfort while we navigate these conversations, these discussions about our lives and the impact that has on other people in our life and in our workplace and our community. Expecting and accepting non-closure. For many, that is the most difficult working agreement to agree to. I know it's difficult for me, but being willing to understand this is not the beginning, this is not the end. This will continue. When we have a lot of work to do. So we need to expect that non-closure at the end of this session. Listen to one another for understanding, and really intently listen to one another. Listen to what people are saying, where they're coming from based on their experiences, and really trying to understand that before making assumptions or judgments on what others say. And of course, confidentiality. It's a little different here because we're being recorded and everyone's watching. So, but for the most part, we try to keep these conversations within the sphere of the context of the conversations and not necessarily share details with with others to the best of our ability. So those are the working agreements that we've agreed to do this work through as a district, and so we present this to the board as well. Next slide. Okay, so we're gonna watch a short video clip, but while you're watching and listening to one of our students, one of our HSD students, I want you to think about your own racial biography. Think about and also think about your pedagogy around culturally responsive leadership, your role as a leader in our school district, and the impact that has on others. I want you to think about, as the student is talking, think about some of those earliest moments, and as well as those recent events that you've had conversations about race or race relations. Think about when you first became aware of race. Think about the ideas that you grew up with regarding race. Think about your family, think about your community, think about your neighborhood, think about your school. Think about how you identify in your personal experiences with respect to race as you are listening to one of our students. So let's play it.
I'm pretty students that, for example, the way they dress or what they have in their features, the way they are, like they try to solve the problem. They only try to solve the problem, but they don't try to solve the root of the problem and what's causing it. Like and when you see that root of the problem, you know whether it's their race, whether it's like how they are, instead of judging them like or teaching them by what they're showing you, teach them like who they are. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know what
you can't teach a rude person the way you would teach a nicer person. You know, so like I can't explain this. It's weird.
It's hard. It's hard.
Normally, I can like think of words, but I don't know how to say it in like a good way.
Well, just say it in any way. You can say. I mean, this is just.
I think sometimes people are racist. Like I don't want to say it, but it's sort of like the reality. Some teachers are like they expect you to fail, and you could feel it. Whether you could feel it. I know you could feel it. Whether they expect you to fail because they kind of go like oh, or like when you come up to them and ask for help, they kind of like get a little annoyed vibe from them, and usually students blame themselves because of they're Mexican, they're Latino, they're African American, or they're white. They feel isolated, but really they're like all the same. Like teachers, they have a good way of like getting to the students. Like they're almost like their second parents. Like the students love hearing the teachers say the good things about them, but when they're sending these vibes like of negative attitude towards them, they feel more depressed, more like less likely to succeed. Like if the expectations they were expected to, they're actually doing, which is failing.
Okay, so we're going to have you just jot down any ideas or thoughts that have surfaced for you as you were seeing the video of one of our students who did go on and graduated from our school system. But what came up for you, and you might want to just keep those notes because we're going to reflect back on them when we talk about the key vocabulary terms as we move on. So I'll give us about 30 seconds to jot down any thoughts or ideas you have that you can anchor to or tether to as we're moving through our key terms and vocabulary for tonight.
And if I may add, the question that was posed was thinking about your earliest experience or interaction about race, and just listening to one of our former students. His interactions may have not been the first interaction, but when he talks about, you could feel it, right? You could feel it. I know you could feel it. About staff members getting annoyed. This vibe. He talks about a vibe negative attitude. So these are experiences that he felt, and maybe it was one of his first experiences, maybe it wasn't, but um, just thinking back on your experiences around race, whether it was similar to this or different, and when you were able to know it and feel it.
Karina, can we go to the next slide, please? So we're going to do a little activity tonight. One of our goals this year is access to common language when we're talking race-based languages. And so we want to ensure that the same terms that we're using are defined in similar ways throughout our school district. These activities we're doing with you tonight are also activities that we're doing with our administrators and with our teachers and other staff members. So we want to walk you through it so that when we are in school board meetings, we're all defining the words similarly. As we move with our common goal this year to allow us to have self-reflection, because that's how we move to change our system, we also look at times that we have to share and define these key terms. So all of you were given access to a Jamboard, which we can put the link inside the chat. But the 6 words we're focused on in Q1 were race, ethnicity, culture, power, privilege, and racism. All 6 of those key terms, we're going to start by defining them ourselves. And so Jordan and I think Rose had sent out that we put in for all cabinet and school board members. The chat was shared with, the Jamboard was shared with you, but you have to be on your HSD account. I will quickly go in here right now and grant anybody who's asked for further access. But the Jamboard, what it's going to allow us to do is there's going to be 6 different slides. Each slide has one of the key terms. So you're going to go into the Jamboard, which I hope is in the chat by now. Okay. If we can work on that, that'd be great. We're going to go into the Jamboard, and each of those slides, we're going to answer in what you define as an individual as race, what you define as ethnicity, what you define as culture, and so on and so forth. So can you, Karina, click on the Jamboard for the keywords?
Fran, so I'm in Jamboard, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be seeing.
If you click on the actual slideshow where it's underlined Jamboard for keywords, if you click on that, that should open it up for you.
Okay.
And is this for board members and cabinet members?
Only,
I'm in there
yes.
and I see a bunch of people entering. Yeah.
Okay. So board members and cabinet members, so we go in there and we can start typing in our own thoughts and ideas.
Right, and what you do is you come over here to the side right below the arrow and it's a sticky. You can change your color, choose your color, and then once you write your answer, you have to drag and move it down or else everybody's get stacked on top of it. And that is your tech lesson for the night and about the extent of my tech expertise.
And how much time do we have to do this exercise?
About 6 minutes, Erica. One little
Because-
tip for everybody, if you click on this button right up here next to 1/7, a different word appears on each of the slides. There should be, so if you want
Are
to
we
do,
supposed to be doing all of them?
yeah, go for it, Mark. Our high schoolers are probably pros at this.
In hindsight, we should have had some music in the background rather than awkward silence.
I wish I could sing. I saw that, Mike.
For the timekeepers out there, we've got about 3 minutes left. So the last one is pretty powerful. Number 6 is racism. So you want to make sure that you get something down in there. All right, part of the reason we do a Jamboard is so that we have an opportunity to just put all of our ideas out there and we can collect them. And what we will end up doing before our next one is collating all of these. But this will also provide you with an opportunity to see what your colleagues are defining it as. And then when we show you how we are through the collective groups defining these, we're going to go through some activities of self-reflection to see how our words align with what we are saying as a district they are. And so this is accessible to you at any time. You can go back and read. There aren't names on them, so you really don't know for sure who people are, but some of them will have your little icon above you. but we're going to move off of the Jamboard. Jamboard is one of the main ways teachers, one of the few ways, but a lot are using it, that they're using in CDL with getting their students to engage and be purposeful in what they're doing. So now you have just a little bit of a glimpse to what our students are doing when they're in CDL. Okay, so when we talk, if we can go to the next slide, Karina. So the key terms that we've defined, I wanted to explain that this is multiple working groups that have worked together to define them using various resources, including stuff from Taking It Up, from the Center of Equity, Educational Equity, from Teaching Tolerance. And then we've all vetted through these words through our Anti-Racist Committee, our Equity Leadership Team, and our Equity Leadership Council, as well as Cabinet. And so I'm going to have various people go ahead and just read the term. And while we're reading them, do your personal definitions that you just did on the Jamboard of, just in case you didn't want one of, you get two ofs, of our working definitions. And what are the similarities and differences that come forward for you as we're talking about this? Lisa, you want to read us race?
Well, I would love to. The working definition of race here is a social construct used and designed to categorize populations of people by biological factors, such as skin color, hair color, etc.
Thank you. Sheann, you want to read ethnicity?
Would love to. Ethnicity, a social construct used and designed to categorize populations of people by cultural expression and identification.
Thanks. Mark, you want to do culture?
Sure. Culture values, knowledge, and beliefs of a particular social group may include, but not limited to, language, religion, music, art, social habits, etc.
And so just reflect back on your personal definitions that you put on the Jamboard and how closely are they related to what they're defining it as a school system. And why this is so important is because as we go along, if we're not all of what we say when we say these words, we can't move forward as a system building towards something even better. And so the one thing I want to point out on this with these three first words is race and ethnicity being social constructs, and that they are things that we've constructed as society to categorize people. It's nothing that they were that was deemed the moment we were all made. It was something that we've socially made to organize people. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, power. Martin, we haven't heard from you yet. While you're reading us this definition, be using the working definitions, and what shifts are you going to need to make in your thinking so that you can achieve alignment? Okay, Martin.
Power, access to resources, decisions, and to decision makers in order to get what you want done, the ability to influence others, and to define reality for yourself and others.
Excellent. Privilege. Let's have Yadira, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Privilege, unearned and earned advantages and benefits experienced by a dominant social group. Privilege can be intersectional.
Thank you. And then we have racism. Erica, you want to give us that definition?
Sure. Racism, a system of oppression based on prejudice and power. While all people can hold racial prejudices and discriminate, only the people in power can be racist, as it requires the institutional power held by those in power.
Thank you. Were there any aha moments or any thoughts of how you will shift for alignment so that your core understanding of these terms align better with how we've defined the terms? Do we have to do the formal, put the question mark in the, or can we just talk?
I think we can just chat. That would be better. I think one thing that comes to mind, and this is recently with our book that we've been kind of digging into as a board, and being an anti-racist. One of the things that I think about in the word racism, and I think this is something that needs to probably shift in our way of thinking as well, is this idea that also that people of color, Black and Indigenous people, don't have some inherent power because they have been able to make themselves whole in a system that has continuously tried to take away from that. I think there's such an enormous amount of power that comes from that is internal and that they have. And so I was kind of meditating on that as I read that book a little bit more, and understanding how sometimes maybe we also need to shift a little bit of our definition to not make it seem that Black, Indigenous, and POCs don't have any inherent power.
Martin, were you going to speak? No, he just went off. Okay. So these are the terms that we did go over in Q1, and there was a few other activities that we did, but in an effort to align with time today, we decided just to focus on the terms and to think about bringing it back to HSD, bringing it back to our students, and bringing it back to the work that we need to do. When we come together next time, we'll take you through what we're doing in Q2, and that leads me to Saide to go over what we're doing in Q2.
Thank you. I just want to make a few comments. I've been sitting on a couple of thoughts. First, I love the Jamboard. It's new to me also in CDL, and it's just such a non-threatening venue to share thoughts. And I know our students really benefit from that, and I think our adults do as well. And we probably should have started the process, the activity, by saying there are no wrong answers, right? So it's a little late for that, but there are no wrong answers, right? We're going through a learning process, and it took the committees that work together to come up with some sense of a definition, also based off of other literature and other organizations out there. And we know it's a work in progress. And so, Erica, I want to thank you for talking about the power of people of color, because the level of resilience that a person of color needs to have and to survive under such dominance and just racial oppression and prejudice in our society is astronomical. So I too believe that there is a great deal of power that's within our Indigenous and people and our people of color. And so I just wanted to thank you for saying that. If we can go to the next slide, I guess that's the last slide.
Saide, do you mind if I chime in for 1 second?
I do not mind.
All right, thank you. I was thinking about the words of the student that was showed that was illustrated in the video. And one of the things that was really apparent as we read through the definitions and got to the point where we're defining power is just the access that some of us in the system have to power, and the lack of access that others have. And as students, it's pretty apparent that they rely on others to access that power. And if they are able to pick up on the biases that we possess, even when we're doing our best, when we're making our best efforts to not expose those, or if we're not aware that we have them, it's pretty apparent that we need to adjust the system so that those biases aren't inherent in everything that we do, and that we provide that access to power that our students need to be successful. So that's one of the things I was thinking about as we went through.
Thank you. Yeah, it would be great to, at some point, create a system where students and families don't feel like they have to navigate it. It just belongs to them, right? It is. But we're getting there. Okay, so as Fran had mentioned earlier, this is what we're doing. This is the work we're doing this year with our administrators, staff and our licensed and classified staff and in our departments as well. So the next time we meet, we're going to be, they're going to see it first, and then you're going to get a glimpse of it. But we're going to be talking about blind spots and awareness, and we're going to have some additional key focus vocabulary. We'll talk about bias and implicit bias. And I know we talked about that somewhat last year, but we're going to revisit those terms, as well as color blindness, prejudice, assimilation, cultural appropriation, colorism. We had a very long and lengthy discussion about microaggressions, and so I think we're still fleshing that out and trying to define it and redefine it as best we can. So as we grapple with it, I'm sure we'll grapple with it here together in this venue with you as well. But that's what our next PD session will focus on in a couple of months, I guess.
And I'm really glad you hit on that, Saidi. This is a process, and this is an active journey that we're all on, that we're all working to achieve. And so I'm glad that both you and Erica centered us back on that this is a process and a journey that we're going to be on in order to dismantle something that has been going on for hundreds of years. So thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Saidi and Fran, and fellow board members and cabinet for participating in our one of our board development items that we have this year. I also just wanted to acknowledge that as we're doing this work, that everybody's in this, doing their best to figure it out, and some definitions will change and evolve as this work continues. So I just want to also make sure that we understand that this work is ever evolving all the time as we understand ourselves better and our society moves along the spectrum of learning. I think this is just a continuation and evolving thing that we'll keep learning more about. Okay, our next item on our agenda is our Community Curriculum Advisory Committee selection process with Travis Raymond. Do I see Travis on here? He might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Oh, geez. I was just getting us warmed up with I'm going to need your help with technology, and then you couldn't hear me, and it's already gone south. I'm sorry. I'm going to set the stage a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you to use a Google form from the chat to indicate support for candidates. But let me get everybody up to speed. The Community Curriculum Advisory Committee is a group that supports staff and the board in an advisory role with new programs and course proposals. We have 14 members and 5 spots for student members, and the regular members serve 2-year terms. So we have 7 open seats with some folks reapplying this year. And so you'll get a chance to meet a few candidates who showed up tonight in our Google Meet. Thank you for being here. Each year we do a self-census of the group to show the demographics in a few different ways and the makeup of the group, so that we can deliberately support the board in diversifying the group so that it matches to the extent possible the communities that we serve. So tonight I want to report that of all respondents last year, we had 6 members identify as white or Caucasian, 4 as Latinx or Mexican American, 1 identified as Asian American or Hong Kong Chinese, and 1 as Sri Lankan or Asian. Of the group, we had 9 female and 5 male self-identifiers, and 0 folks who identified as transgender, gender fluid, or non-binary. The greatest representation by elementary feeder area, attendance area, was with Imlay, with 3 participants who are from the Imlay area, and 2 from Tobias and 2 for Patterson. Everyone else was just 1 rep per elementary area. We did, during the summer, thanks to Fran and Olga, advertised this opportunity as well as the budget committee and our PAC groups. The recommendation in the survey from the CCAC members after they identified themselves demographically was to recruit more LGBTQIA plus members of the community, continue to diversify based on race, ethnicity, and cultural groups, continue to diversify the group by languages spoken, include more African American voices, perhaps the Muslim community and other religious groups. So while we don't have data on the religious affiliation as identified by the groups, that is what the CCAC themselves typed into the boxes saying whose voice should be at the table. And I wanted to report that back. We have permission to report that from the group as they filled out the survey. Tonight, I know that 5 people indicate that they would be here to present themselves and say hello. The first of them that I have on my list is Tom Hughes. Tom, are you here? You'd have about 1 minute to say who you are and why you'd like to serve on the Community Curriculum Advisory Committee.
Yeah, I'm here and I would love to say hello to the board, and it's good to see you all, even at this distance. I've been on the committee this year, which almost doesn't count, and last year, which was fairly active because we approved the language arts curriculum, and that was an interesting and important step forward. You know, in terms of who I am, I spent 30 years as a classroom teacher in the Beaverton School District, and I think listening to the previous discussion, it's kind of intriguing to think back to what lessons we learned as teachers. We learned a lot about kids and how they function, and oftentimes they created their own subcategory in the minds of teachers. We had a tendency to think of them as, you know, based on how they, as the young man said, as how they dressed and how they behaved in class. And I remember one time watching a kid that I had pretty much identified as not very likely to be a good achiever, and maybe even a little slow in intellect, who was obviously not paying attention as I was lecturing in class. And so I went over and asked him to show me his notes. And it turned out that he had taken notes on my entire lecture and converted them all into the lyrics of a song completed with music. And that was kind of an eye opener for me to say, oh, crap, these kids know a lot more. And it's hard to base your biases on what you see in front of you sometimes. And I think that I bring that to the committee and as we work on curriculum, but a pretty good understanding of how that curriculum relates back to actual kids sitting in classes. So despite the fact that I don't really meet many of the qualifications for diversifying the committee, I would still like to give it another couple of years.
Thank you, Tom. Can you guys? Great. I saw Lauren Stillman.
Hi, Travis. Oh, here, hold on. Let me get my video on. Sorry. Can you see me? Or
We can't see you yet. We can hear you though.
okay, hold on. Let me see. I'm kind of new to this stuff. Okay, hold on. I'm going to see if my son can help me for a minute.
That's okay. Why don't we'll let a couple people go and then come back.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. Isuru said she would be here, but I don't see her. Isuru, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Can you see me? Yes.
Yep, I can now. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Isuru, and this is my second year with CCAC. Actually, I'm from Sri Lanka before I moved to Oregon. At this moment, I'm working as a substitute teacher for Hillsboro School District, which is really nice experience for me. So I had my master's degree in curriculum and instruction. That is where I felt like the curriculum, how important is to make a proper curriculum for the kids. And it is really great opportunity for me to work with the CCAC group to see how this curriculum and instruction working in a real situation, in a real working field. So I enjoyed this meeting and everything, every work that we did last year. So I'm hoping to have more activities in next year too.
Thank you very much. Christina Stevenson, I see you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Stevenson. I grew up in the Hillsboro School District, and I'm a civil rights attorney. My son is now at Rosedale in comprehensive distance learning. And my interest is, just as a parent, but of course, with my background in civil rights, wanting to bring the equity lens and really appreciate the work you all were doing ahead of this meeting. But just when I look at my son's curriculum, as Chair Lopez was talking about, this is, a spectrum, and we're all working and trying to get better. And I think that that's the role of this committee, is to help push us forward, make sure that their curriculum reflects the diversity of the students in the district, and in looking at my son's curriculum, like I'm not seeing folks of different abilities reflected. I'm not. So I think there's room for improvement, certainly for all of us, and how our curriculum looks, and that's why I'm interested in being part of this committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. Danny Adzema, are you here?
One second. Hi, I am here. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Good, cool. Well, I'm Danny. I am a senior at our PCC Early College. I used to be on the board. I want to serve on the CCAC because I think that curriculum is the lifeblood of the schools, and what we teach our students is really important, and we're creating the future leaders of tomorrow. And I love the work that the CCAC did with the comprehensive sexual education last year, and I would just love to keep on seeing the work we can do for equity and inclusion, especially for students of color and LGBT students.
Thank you, Danny. Lauren Stillman-Smith.
Okay. Did I get it right this time?
We got you.
See and hear. Okay, yay. Figuring this out still. So I have been living in this community for a long time. I've had 3 kids in the Hillsboro School District. I've been volunteering in the Hillsboro School District for the past 17 years. 2 of my kids have already graduated, and one is still left at Glencoe, who's a junior this year. So we have, just the 2 more years, and he's been participating in the distance learning, and they've been doing a really great job. I've been really impressed with how it's been working, given the difficult time, right, that we're in right now. Anyway, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been working in the community for over 20 years. I've worked a lot with adolescents. I used to run an adolescent drug and alcohol program, and worked a lot with the junior highs and the high schools in the area. So I feel like, I've been really involved, also just volunteering in the community, and kind of gauging what the needs are of our community. And I'd really like to be a CCAC so I can continue to support the Hillsboro School District, even when my kids are out of school and stuff, because I've really enjoyed. I also kind of plan on continuing to volunteer in the schools too, because the teachers certainly can use all the help they can get, especially at the elementary school level with their large class sizes and just being one teacher. So anyway, I'd really like to be a part of the committee, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to kind of introduce myself and just say hi. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. So I'm going to shoot a survey link. It's a Google form to the board members. Please only access this if you're a board member. And what you'll do is identify any of the candidates who you support for appointment. There are 7. Yep.
There's a question on here before we get to that part. Lisa?
He might be about to answer it, because I wanted clarification on exactly how many, since we have a student and all that, and I bet it sounds like you're already going to answer it, so I'll just let you do that. Okay.
Thank you. No problem. It is complicated. So this is like the sticker activity on the wall of 218C. Do you remember 218C? So there are 7 open seats and there are more than 7 candidates, but the board does not have to appoint all 7 seats right now. If you choose to appoint 2 candidates or 5 candidates or 6, that is fine. What I'm going to do after you indicate who you support, I'm going to look at the data sheet that this spits out, and I'll tell you like who the candidates are with how many votes, and you can choose to identify the top rungs of that if you choose to, or the top 7 automatically, up to you. And we'll give you a minute to deliberate about that like we do when we're doing the sticker activity. There's a separate one that identifies 1 student candidate, and that's Danny. We have 2 students returning, and then Danny would be the lone student who you could vote to appoint. And so right now I'm going to stick that one. And if you support her candidacy, you could click the box called Danny Adzema in that sheet right there, and then we'll have evidence that she had X number of votes from school board members. At the regular session, you'll have a chance to formally appoint the slate of candidates that you decide right now. Did that help, Lisa?
So on the main sheet, we should vote for no or select no more than 7.
Yeah, if you chose more than 7, that'll throw off our data. It would be great if you gave yourself 7 votes max.
And back to your point, Travis, of identifying our group and making sure that we have representation in the CCAC. The 7 that we're voting on, the makeup that you told us earlier, that is inclusive of the other 7 that are already serving on CCAC but are not up for re-election or reappointment for those positions?
There are several candidates. There are 4 candidates who are reapplying right now who are part of that demographic data.
Thank you.
Yep.
So board members, I'm just going to give you a couple minutes to go in there. And then after that, do we have anything else from you, Travis, to follow up on this item?
I think what I'll be able to do is tell you the data right away. Would you like me to project it, or do you want me to read off the top vote getters?
Yeah, if you want to just give us a couple minutes, make sure I get everybody.
Go ahead. Yep. Thank you, Erica.
Do the students vote? Student board members vote or select? No, just us.
Thanks, Rose. I'm seeing 4 respondents so far. Now 5, 6. We have all 7 board members here tonight. Yep. Rose, do I have permission to present the graph, or would you like to do that?
Were you able to get Jackie access? I think that
I'm
we're
sorry.
still missing Jackie's vote.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the chat. Is it, Jackie, are you using your normal email account?
I am, but I'm on the meeting on my work laptop, and it doesn't allow access to Google Docs. So if you just email it to my school board account, I can access it on my iPad.
Can you tell me what your email is real quick so I can type it in?
Oh, Jordan just emailed it.
Thank you, Jordan.
I can tell you that Danny has 6 votes out of 6 submissions. So it's looking favorable for Danny.
If we're not able to get Jackie's on that Google form, can she just send them to you, or?
She could chat Rose. I'm going to try to project. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties here.
Can you chat at a specific person in this platform?
I don't believe so, but Jordan.
I don't think you can. Yeah.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
I think this data would help you create the slate of candidates that you'd like to appoint.
But again, we're still waiting for Jackie's input, right?
Yeah, it just won't show up on this until unless she gets it. I'm going to mute while my family discusses catch up so you guys can have a conversation.
Rose, will you let us know once you've received them, and that will.
Hey, Erica, would you be open to moving on to the next agenda item and capture that time, and then we can come back with the data at the very final, like, few minutes of this work session?
Yeah, that works. That's best. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our next agenda item, which is our Black Village Family Advisory Committee with Travis.
Great, thank you. Another exciting topic. So just to catch everybody up, the purpose of our parent advisory committees has been to inform the board and staff regarding programs and policies. We focus our PACs on our BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, in order to get information from families to support our students and eliminate disparities in outcomes for our students in HSD. The newest forming PAC for us has been the Black Village Family Advisory Committee, who's here to introduce themselves to you tonight. Another bit of exciting information is that in Word Up, twice a year opportunity for each of our PACs, our Latinx and Bilingual Programs PAC, our Native American PAC, and our Black Village Family Advisory Committee to meet face-to-face with the board in the fall and in the spring. This would be the first time for the Black Village Family Advisory Committee to meet with you. So that's exciting for us. I would like,
Travis,
yep.
I was just gonna say, after we do introductions of our PAC, we can also have introductions of just our cabinet and board members so that they're also aware of who we are, and we can introduce ourselves.
Thank you so much, Erica. So the last thing that I did not mention was that the topics for these meetings would be of mutual interest to the PACs and to the board. And so we can always work together to figure out what those topics are. And in order to get input, tonight the conversation is going to be some sharing of who they are and the beginning of this PAC's work. But also this group has seen data and participated in our SRO surveys and has seen the proposed improvements to the MOU with the city of Hillsboro and the police department, and have information to share that will be helpful to the board in making the best decision possible. So that's a context for tonight. Why don't we go ahead and introduce Erica? Do you mind introducing the board first, and then we'll move through cabinet and then to our families?
Yes, I'll call on you board members and just be in line and you can all chime in when it's your turn. So let's start with Jackie, Martin, and Lisa.
I think Jackie just got kicked off.
Okay, well, let's go Lisa, Martin, and Yadira.
Hello, I am Lisa Allen. I am a school board member, and I'm really excited to have you with us this evening.
Hello, Martin Granum, school board member. And I've grew up in Portland and lived all over the world, have over 8 years living overseas, and those experiences inform my thinking and shape who I am today. So.
Hi, my name is Yadira Martinez. Thank you for joining us tonight. Oh, I'm a board member.
Next, we'll have Sheehan, Mark, and Jackie if she's on.
Good evening, Sheehan Kim, and I'm also a school board member. Really excited to have you all here with us tonight. Thank you.
Mark Watson, school board member. Yeah, great. Thanks for being here and chatting with us.
Hi, Jackie Strauss, school board member. Thank you for being here.
And next, can we have our student representatives also introduce themselves? And we'll start with Ilham, Maya, and Devlin.
Hi, my name is Ilham Akramala. I am a student rep to the student board, and thank you guys for being here and chatting with us.
Hi, my name is Maya Smith. I am a student representative, and I want to thank you all for being here.
All right. Hi, my name is Devlin. I'm a student board representative from Liberty. I just want to thank you guys for being here and having this discussion.
Eric, I can go across my screen and identify cabinet members.
Perfect.
Superintendent.
Thanks, Travis. My name is Mike Scott, Superintendent of the Hillsboro School District. Really glad to have you here this evening, and thank you for all of your efforts over these past several months.
I see Jordan, and then Kana, and then Dale.
Hi, Jordan Beveridge. I'm the Chief Information Technology Officer for the district.
Good evening, Connelly Williams, Human Resources Officer. Welcome, glad you're here tonight.
Hello, I'm Dale Sitzer, Assistant Superintendent for Schools. Thank you so much for giving your time this evening.
Now I see Michelle, Casey, and Beth.
Hello, Michelle Morrison, Chief Financial Officer, and at your service. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, Casey Walatich, Chief Operations Officer. I oversee all of our support service departments in the district.
And I'm Beth Grazer. I'm the Chief Communications Officer.
I think that's everybody. I'd like to introduce John Allen, Principal of West Union Elementary School, to talk about the beginnings of this group and introduce the group. So thank you for being here tonight, John.
Thank you very much, Travis. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to have us come speak today. So the origins of this group came about from a conversation with Travis and I. He attended one of our other PAC meetings. And at that meeting last winter, I believe it was, a African-American parent went to this PAC meeting just to be around other families of color, just to kind of gain some sort of connection in the community. And when she went to that meeting, I believe it was one of our Latinx Parent Advisory Council meetings. So she went to that meeting just seeking out some sort of connection. And Travis happened to be at that meeting and brought that to my attention one day, just kind of after another meeting we had. And so the idea was, what is the need? Like, is there a need for families, African-American families, to be able to reach out and truly feel like stakeholders in the community? And what does that look like in what we're offering right now? And after some discussion, we realized that there was nothing directly targeted towards the African American community in Hillsboro School District. So we collected some data, found out that Hillsboro School District has about 1,000 students in it that identify as African American or Black. We use that information to collect some data around graduation rates, test scores, discipline data, and then put all that together and invited our African American families to we called it a family engagement event. So we offered our families to come to this family engagement event at the Hillsboro Library. It was a huge turnout, definitely was a success. We were able to share a lot of information about Hillsboro School District, a lot of information about a community that they were directly in touch with, and then also just provided some fellowship for those families. And one of the things we heard, besides the appreciation of the fellowship and of the information, was that for many of those families, it was the first time their child had ever had a chance to play with other African American children due to their location in Hillsboro, because it's a small group, they're spread out, different schools. So that was for many of them, that was the first time their kid had a chance to play with other African American kids. And that kind of continued to spark that need and greater conversation and the need to keep this group going and organize to become a PAC. So we organized, planned, structured our framework and agendas, had a few more meetings, started introducing the idea of a PAC and how it works. We had some great support doing that. And from that, we were able to get to the point where we are now, where elected, we're going to hear from in a moment. And now we're ready to be able to take the next steps where we can feel like our community is really contributing to some of the decisions that Hillsboro School District is making and offering an opportunity to lend our voice to the school board. So for that opportunity, and with that, I would love for our fabulous board to introduce themselves.
Hello, fellow school board members. Thank you for having us and being interested in meeting with us. When Travis said that you all wanted to meet with us and took some extra time out of your busy agendas, we were so happy and felt so honored to come and meet with you all. My name is Anna Wayward Bradley, and I'm the chair of the Black Village Family Advisory Committee. I have a second grader that goes to Tobias Elementary. Currently, he's doing the Hillsboro Online Academy as we're doing school at home. And I believe all of our leadership or all of our leaders are here from the group. So I would like to give a chance for each one of them to briefly introduce themselves too, starting with Jemiah. And then afterwards, I can tell you all a little bit more about the group if you want.
Good. Hello. Hopefully my audio is okay. If I could get a thumbs up from someone. Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Yes, my name is Jemiah Cherry, and I have the privilege of having a 6th grader at Quitama Elementary. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having us.
And then next, Jelana.
Hello, I'm Jelana Canfield. I'm the mother of Nikolai Wu. He's a 4th grader at Hazel Elementary. And thank you for having us here. I joined the board when I went to that first meeting that John and Travis organized. And I wanted to learn more and understand more of the experiences that my son was having and how to handle them. Thank you.
And then David is here also.
Hello. Thanks for having us here tonight. My name is David Steinhauer, and I have an 8-year-old 3rd grader over at West Union. However, we transitioned to the Hillsboro Online Academy based on our schedule. For the meantime, they can't wait to get her back to class.
And then Nancy also is here.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Thomas, and I have a freshman at Liberty. We did sixth grade at Katana, we then matriculated through Pointer, and now we're at Liberty High School. And I too met John Allen and Travis at the events that we've had at the library, and I knew it was destined for big things, and I volunteered like all of us did to get together and help this group form. And what you have today is the result of the effort from those meetings. So John and Travis, we really appreciate the fact that you made that happen. Thank you.
So if you all notice, thank you guys for introducing yourselves and being here too. If you all notice, our name is a little bit different. It's the Black Village Family Advisory Committee. We were informed of some of the other PACs we're going with Parent Advisory Committee. We really took the time and energy to come up with our name because we are a diverse community. A lot of times folks that may not know much about the Black community think we're all the same, and we're not. So that name is to recognize that piece. We have parents, Black people are coming from all over the world. So we wanted to make sure it was inclusive, as well as recognizing that we all live in Hillsboro. We all have kids that attend the Hillsboro School District, and we're all wanting to come together, not only to form a community, but support each other and our kids feel included and feel supported as they attend their respective schools. And we chose family instead of parent because, again, speaking to the diversity of our group, we have some parents that are parents of their kid, and we also have some caregivers. Sometimes it might be a grandparent, sometimes it might be an adoptive parent. It could be another adult stepping up to parent the kids. So we wanted to recognize that too. And make sure with the small number of us in Hillsboro, about 1,000 kids and families, that we all feel like we belong and accepted in this group as we build this community to support each other. So that's a little bit more about us. Any questions that you have?
I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. I totally forgot to introduce myself. My name is Erica Lopez, and I'm the chair of the Hillsboro School Board. So I just wanted you to be aware of who I was as I kind of introduced everybody else. But I'm so thankful to have you all here and really appreciative of that explanation about your name. And I think that's really great, and that you took that time to name the group something that encompasses everything that you want it to be. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, and as Travis said that you all were willing to meet with us about the survey that went out to us that speaks more about the School Resource Officer Program. And so we're willing to talk to you all a little bit more about that. We are representing a community, but like I said, keep in mind that we're diverse. So it may not be a uniform answer from us, but we're willing to have that discussion with you all too. And I'll lead it with David. We've been doing some focus group with our parents in the community. And so you can speak a little bit more to that piece.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Anna. I know I got to be considerate of time, and I'll hopefully not talk too fast here, but I'll give a brief background of myself. I grew up in Hillsboro, elementary through high school, Newberry, Pointer, Glencoe. So I've been able to see the changes in just the community here in school, or in Hillsboro, as well as the school district. And as John mentioned, 1,000 kids, 1,000 Black students who are identified as Black in the Hillsboro School District. And, to me, that feels like a sliver. However, in my experience, I remember I was the only Black kid at Newberry until 3rd grade. And then 2 of us went through elementary school. and again, I think I appreciate having this conversation, which I think this is just a small portion to a lot larger conversation. Because with 1,000 students, it's really hard to feel included, I would think, or to have a voice at the table or an advocate, or have that support. And I think that a lot of Black students out there, maybe they need additional support. And that's one of the reasons why I joined this committee. Also having a child in the school district as well, I have that vested interest. But it's more, I think, than just having the conversation to change systems, to try and get process improvements, but to make the Black and African American parents and students feel like they have a community here in Hillsboro, and especially within the Hillsboro School District. So we had a meeting. Well, I think our last two meetings have been discussing the SROs, and we were provided the data that you all had surveyed, and held focus groups and listened to some of the parents, speaking out. And again, as Anna alluded to earlier, not everybody's the same. Not everybody has the same experience. I can tell you from this group, it's not, oh, take the SROs out of the school. No, that's not the conversation, because there's a lot of good that they bring. But we do believe that there should be some changes. And the presentation that was provided to us, there is a lot of great recommendations in there. Some of the key ones that I'll just hit on is transparency. And that can be even with the schedule. I really think that there's a lack in understanding from the parents and what's their schedule. I just found out from John during the call that the SRO is only there once a week. And I think, that's an elementary school. It may differ at other schools, but I think some transparency and providing more understanding to parents about the role of the SRO officer, as well as I think how they got to that role. I know that some of the recommendations go as far as education and then continued learning, which we think is a huge proponent. You can just look at statistics and how that impacts the Black community and how they're disproportionately targeted. Not to say that that's going to happen from an SRO, but the statistics are there. So I think that providing some education and some ongoing training is going to be huge. Also points out, I think, to me personally, I think that there needs to be a relationship as well for the Black students, or again, BIPOC students, and even the parents, and probably more so the parents even, to maybe have an opportunity to meet these SROs, to develop that understanding. And I know some folks from our group, and even hearing it, but when you have the 6'4" Black freshman, who is being targeted and seen as somebody that's older than he is, I think that could be alleviated by just meeting, by having a conversation. So I think that that's a huge proponent as well. Anna or anyone else from the group, feel free to speak up as well. I totally don't want to hijack this and continue talking. But uniforms came up. Obviously, guns. Should the weapon be visible? Should it not be visible? And I know that that's one that's going to have to be taken up with the Hillsboro Police Department. But I think that there are some ways to maybe hide that, or make changes to that as well. So I know that a lot of folks from the group are not necessarily against it, but not necessarily for it. The uniform change, I think, is going to be huge, just so that folks can differentiate who's an SRO or who is an actual police officer that came to the school that is not an SRO. We've heard examples that police officers, whether they're county or city police officers, if they're not trained in this SRO program or familiar with it, that the interaction is much different than if it were an SRO. So I think that there has to be some sort of differentiator. I don't know if it's a colored badge around the arm or some sort of just complete makeover. I think that would be great as well. Please feel free to chime in, Jemai.
Yeah, well, I know another thing that we had talked about was who's involved in choosing who's an SRO in the the onboarding process and or the hiring process, seeing if there's administrators or members of the community, even students involved that would be able to kind of, at least it's not just solely on the discretion of the Hillsboro Police Department to send someone just because they've gone through detective training, or this might be the next part of the rotation that they're looking into. The history of like the Black community with policing it goes way back further than just this summer, right? I mean, there's so much more to it than that. And so I think being able to get involved at an earlier step in knowing who is going to schools will only speak for goodwill.
Yeah, and I think when we did our focus groups, so just to give you a little bit of background, we've been meeting as a group now, not that long. So last February was when a lot of us met, Travis and John, and then COVID happened. And so there was the lockdown and a break. And then we reformed again in July. And then just recently, the surveys went out over the summer. And then since then, when we got the results from Travis, we've been trying to catch our family members to kind of hear a little bit more from them. So it's been relatively quick, but we've been trying to kind of hear from them. And like David and Jemai was saying, one of the main themes was learning more about the SRO programs and how they work. We have some families that learned that, yes, they are armed when they're at the school, and some of them didn't know that, and that was concerning. But then we also heard, from Sergeant O and some other folks that, well, they go out on other calls, so they may need to have that weapon on them. And we heard from some parents that are wanting to know, are they dressed in uniforms? Or can they be casual so they're more approachable? So just different things, where questions were coming up. So at this point, and we were hearing also from John that, well, they only come one day a week. But then at the same time, if they're not available, another officer might show up that may not be trained in working with kids. So that was a little concerning to hear as well. So then it was a question of, okay, well, who's the backup if the SRO is not at the school and the school needs the person to come in? So different things, that we're hearing. Are we at the point of, yes, keep the program, no, do away with the program? I don't think we're there yet. But I do hear some folks wanting to have the program monitored to kind of see outcomes of how the kids are responding to their SROs and how effective they are in the schools at this point. So that came up as well, seeing if there's a way to monitor their activities and better gauge their effectiveness.
So Anna, in addition to what Anna said, this is Nancy, we also talked about the fact that it is not just the Black village that would need to know a little bit more about the SRO program. Most parents do not realize that there are police officers in the building. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. Most parents simply don't know that. Not the district was hiding anything. It is a resource. It has been a valued resource, and it has had different results based on who was in the program, what school, what the condition was. So there are there's a myriad of different ways to describe the interactions that have happened at the schools. I personally have had good interaction with the SRO officer that we had at Pointer Middle School. I know that is because Dr. Petey runs a very, very tight ship at Pointer, and we knew who that person was. My son's bike got stolen. He got hit by a car just a block away from the school. All kinds of things happened. But my point is, that we knew who this person was. We made it a point to know who the person was. We made it a point to know that, okay, this is the resource officer. And then we also made sure that our 6-foot freshman now could also identify who that person was and have a relationship with that person. So in just like Anna said, our goal is not to come here and tell you that all Black people want the resource officers out of the building. That's not true. What we are saying is that there is some training that probably needs to be done. There is some tweaking to the program. There is some transparency to convey to all parents of the district with regard to the entire program. And quite frankly, we appreciate the city of Hillsboro for making it possible, because this comes, and that is appreciated. We just need to make sure that the program serves our children and it also protects our children. And we make sure that we have positive interactions either with a parent, with the staff, and with the children.
Hello, I'm secretary for the Black Village Family PAC. Another aspect we brought up during one of our meetings as a way to create transparency is on the website to have a photo and the name of the officer that is at each school. And that would help all families get to know their SRO. And also through the training is one of the issues would be some trauma. A lot of families and children might have experienced one, whether it's just through the media or their own family experience, negative interactions with law enforcement. So some form of understanding that the SRO might be dealing with children that have PTSD, some form of trauma while dealing with law enforcement, and just to be ready for that through their training.
I do think one other aspect that I forgot to mention was just reporting, being able to get data back, in regards to, and I know that there's sensitivities involved when it comes to students, and especially with such a small minority of the demographics. But I do think it would be helpful to know how many times an SRO has been on a campus and might have been acting in a law enforcement capacity versus just the kind of what they initially concept of building and teaching within the school district. So it would be useful to know, hey, you know what, they actually had like 3 or 4 incidents at this school, over this period of time. And it would be nice to hear back from them, not just once a year. I'd say, at least while the program's getting going, I'd like to hear ongoing at least a couple times throughout a school year.
Thank you so much for all your feedback. This is really helpful to us as we evaluate our program. And it's really important for us to hear from our parents, but also from our students, and get their perspective as well, because we are very focused on being student-centered and ensuring that, sometimes that's why one of the reasons why we have student board members right now is because they bring a perspective in these spaces where the majority of time there's just adults in here, but we really want to get also the perspective of our students and our families that are not in the building, but that experience a lot of the decisions that we make here at the board level. Mike, you had a comment?
Thank you, Erica. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Travis and John for helping us get to where we are right now, stepping up into a leadership void that existed and making this opportunity available. I think is only going to make us better. And I also wanted to say the feedback evening and the specificity of the feedback that you provided is incredibly helpful for us. We're at a point in time, not only in our district, but in the state and in the nation, reimagine what our relationship with law enforcement looks like. And as we go about doing that, I reflect a little on the different iterations that we've had in the district and the roles that our SROs have played. And this is the perfect time for us to take a look at this and to move forward in a positive vein. And so some of the things that you shared around transparency and that relationship building piece and how we choose SROs and Even about who is the SRO's backup when they can't be available to the building, being really deliberate about how we introduce and are transparent about who the SROs are in our building. And then that trauma piece, of course, is hugely important. And I loved Nancy, the way she put it, the 3 T's: training, transparency, and tweaking. Those are all things that need to happen with our SRO program. So as you are likely aware through Travis and John, we've been engaged in this process of reviewing our relationship with our SROs look like. We too are hugely appreciative of Washington County Sheriff and the Hillsboro Police Department because of provided this resource, I believe, for 28 years now. And so we appreciate that. And we also appreciate that they are willing to engage in this conversation and make the necessary modifications. So as we take our next steps, we really are looking at really 2 different tracks. We need to make a decision about what our relationship looks like moving forward. And if we are able to continue that relationship in a way that addresses the concerns that you brought forward and other people have shared, then embedding all of that in a memorandum of understanding so that we are held accountable and our law enforcement partners are held accountable for what that relationship looks like and what the role is. So, man, that's an incredibly long-winded way of saying thank you tonight. But really, I wanted to thank you for the thought that you put into this and the feedback that you provided. I look forward to working with you as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And we have a comment from Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo what Chair Erica and Superintendent Mike said. Thank you very, very much. And I also wanted to salute you. It's a pretty courageous thing to come into this public forum and lead us through a really candid discussion about an issue as existential and as in the news as this. And so it's a very courageous thing. And I'm grateful. The conversation we just had is powerful. And I took a whole page full of notes. And also, Mike, something else that Nancy mentioned: train, tweak, transparency, and thank you to the City of Hillsboro for their partnership. So, and the Sheriff's Office as well. I think what's important to me, and I think important to all of us, is that we get it right for Hillsboro School District and for our community. So, what we wind up doing may be quite unique to our situation and what we need to be doing. But there's a national dialogue and a regional dialogue that we're all listening to and hearing. And I think what we're endeavoring to do is to get it right for the Hillsboro School District and our community. And so thank you for being a part of that.
Thanks, Martin. Mark had a comment, and it kind of is in line with a follow-up question that I had. I think one of the things that I heard you, David, state was that this provided an opportunity to create some community among the Black community and African American community that didn't exist before. And as we know, in kind of Western Washington County, we don't have many culturally specific organizations that serve the Black community and the African American community. And so, in that aspect, I'm wondering what other things might we be able to help in that regard. And also, if there are any other topics that you wanted to bring to the board or kind of flag for us to think about.
Well, that question is right up my avenue. We'll continue conversations. No, in my current job, I'm provided the opportunity to work with a lot of the organizations around Hillsboro. So I work with folks in HR. I work with diversity and equity leaders. And honestly, one of the main challenges that these organizations have when it comes to Black and African American folks like this, because it's one thing to bring someone over to work at one of these big companies that everyone out of college wants to work at. But once they come to this area and the community feel and they kind of feel separate, that's a whole nother aspect. And it's challenging enough for these organizations just to hold on to top talent, that are people of color. And so I have, from a business standpoint, have discussed ways to be able to do that. But I think what this group is doing, provide community. Yeah, I mean, for Black folks to go get their hair done, do they have to drive to this one spot in East Portland to go get that done? Where are the resources? I think just recently, Hillsboro adopted, the Black Chamber of Commerce, to support Black business owners. That's a great resource. So I think that there's ways to do it. But yeah, even like the Hillsboro School District is, I think John pointed out, we're scattered. Ever since this COVID pandemic hit, I've met more Black people in my entire life, and it's all been mainly over Zoom. We're connecting, we're doing this. I got, my daughter's played with some, who lives on just the other side of Hillsboro. So I think there are some benefits to this, and I think that the conversation we're having right now, and it seems that you all are understanding it, that there's more that we can do. I will say that maybe we won't get it right, but if we put in the effort and continue, like Nancy said, to tweak it, I think we can create a community here in Hillsboro and within the school district that does feel welcoming to the 1,000 students and families. And like I think Anna said too, I mean, the Black children, I was adopted. Both my parents were white. Yet my experience, again, just because of the color of my skin, is different. So we have a lot of Black students whose parents may not even identify as white, and they're going to need support as well. So that's a great topic to discuss. I appreciate that.
And the only other thing that I would add to what David is talking about, retention is a difficult process, and it is a difficult goal to attain. In my professional life, forgive me, I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Oregon Department of Human Services District 2, which is Multnomah County. And we struggle to retain Black employees. I tell you this to let you know that it's not easy. It takes intentional work. It takes lots of thought, lots of planning, but it takes intentional work. I think that Hillsboro can do it. You're demonstrating it on smaller levels. I get it. And it's hard to recruit anybody to come to Oregon. I get it. But I'm here. And I am not from the Pacific Northwest. I am here, but I got to tell you, I enjoy it. I really do. And like David said, if we can recruit, and if we can actively engage groups like ourselves and the Black Chamber to help support those people when they do move to this community, they will feel more welcome. If you did not know, it's called there's a group, and they have a professional event, and the whole purpose of Say Hey, and the whole purpose of the event is to welcome people who are moving into the community. That's the sole purpose of the event. Imagine if we did something obviously smaller, because we have a smaller population. The idea, again, is that you consider that when you recruit someone, that you build a village around them, quite frankly. So I just want to let you know that I appreciate how difficult it is, because it is difficult, but it is not impossible. And oh, by the way, it's important that we do it anyway, even though it's hard. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate being able to work with you. And we think that we've moved in pretty much light speed since August of this year. And we're really excited about what we can do. And thanks to Travis, and thanks to John and Mike, your leadership, Erica, your leadership as well. We're going to get there. We really are. And we hope that we are a light that you can hold up as a benefit for moving to this community and to help the school district be the #1 school district that it is. So there you go.
That is my goal, Nancy. I want other school districts to look at our district and say, this is how it's done. Look at Hillsboro. So thank you, everyone. And Travis, I acknowledge your comment on our chat that you will continue to work with our PACs as well with Fran and Olga, and document these topics. And of course, we will continue to have these presentations and dialogue with our PACs in our board meeting. So thank you so much to our village. And I hope that we will see you here again, and we will have an opportunity to have a different conversation about another topic.
All right. Thank you so much for having us again.
And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we know that you also have families at home, so you can always log off. All right, our next item on our agenda for tonight is our budget committee selection process with Michelle Morrison. And we're back on track.
just like that. Thank you, directors. This meeting has just been so exciting. I just have to tell you, just the movement and watching it and getting to be a part of that. So thank you very much for your leadership in that. Along the same vein, we have had 2 positions open on our budget committee since June 30th, and we are hoping to fill those. We've extended the twice now in order to kind of align our budget community membership more with the demographics of the students that we serve. And we are going to do it one more time in order to increase that window once again and to actively invite our diverse community to apply for this opportunity. So applications will be accepted through Friday, November 20th. And we'll move forward with the appointment at the December 8th meeting. I'm glad that the Google form voting seemed to go well. Thank you, Travis, for getting all the kinks out, because we'll do a very similar process like that at the December meeting. And then our budget development process will begin after that meeting. So thank you. I just wanted to give you guys an update on that.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, our next item, actually that is our last item. So we are gonna do a recess and we will be back here at 7 to start our regular session. Oh, sorry, Travis.
Is it okay if I show the data that the Jackies came in on?
Oh, yes, that's right. We have to come back to that.
Okay.
And then we'll have a comment before from Martin. No,
Sorry
okay.
about that. I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to do it the way everybody else did.
No worries. Sorry, we're just trying to work this out. So I apologize for the clunky platform. Here's the data. You can see we have 7 seats, and there are 7 tall bars that have more than half of members. You can look at that and think about the slate of folks you want to appoint. There are 7 open seats. You don't have to appoint 7, but those are the numbers right there. Do you want me to enlarge? Can people see this?
We can see it.
Erica, if you want to facilitate a conversation around what the preference would be, I have no opinion.
So board members, you see currently on our visual aid here that we have 3 that got 7, all 7 board members nomination. We got 1 with 6 and the rest are either 5 or below. In thinking about Travis, the information you provided and us looking to ensure that we have diverse representation on our committees, on our board committees, I wanted to just check and see with you all if you all wanted to feel like we can nominate all 7 seats based on the candidates we have, or if we should hold a number of seats vacant to try to recruit for more diverse representation in our CCAC. I just want to get your thoughts on that before we then move on to create what our slate will be. Feel free to chime in.
I'll chime in. I think that we have 7 people who have a majority of board members selecting them. So I think that is a good benchmark for selection. I also think that we do this every year, and we have the opportunity to continue to encourage people to apply. We often have vacancies throughout the year. And if we get, additional applicants who we think would be great, we have the power with this specific committee to increase the size if we so choose. And so I feel comfortable with selecting the 7 people who have more than half the board members selecting them.
Thank you, Lisa. Martin, and then Jackie.
I echo Lisa's comment, and I would also add that Emily, who would be in that category of probably ones we would hold as a continuing member, so I would like to recognize her ongoing service. So I'm all for moving this group of 7 forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm wondering if in the future it would be helpful if we knew the applicants' demographics, and I don't know if we can ask that, or if we can ask it but not require it. Just it might be a little bit easier to make sure we are meeting the demographics of our students rather than having to guess or make judgments. Did I lose everybody?
Nope, we heard you.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I don't know, Travis, if you had an answer for that.
We can work on that. I would just like to be careful about how we approach that, but I understand the value.
Thank you. Okay, so I think everybody in the chat agreed on the top 7 vote getters and moving those names over as our slate. Travis, did you need anything else?
I don't think so. Rose, do you have what you need in order to have the provide a motion and the appointment of those folks?
Yes, I do. That's why I started typing the names, but I'll wait to type the names into the chat closer to the motion so that I don't hit the name again.
Thanks, Rose, for your help. Thank you, Erica.
All right, everyone. So we have our slate and we will be voting on that in our regular session. So with that, I'll recess our work session. I'll see you in a couple minutes.
Do we leave here and rejoin or just go
Same
away?
link.
Okay.
Same, just mute. Welcome back, everyone. All right, I see most everyone's back here. I am going to enter us into our regular work session for the Hillsboro School District. And just a clarification on here, I see a comment from you, Lisa, asking about if we're going to have the names in the motion. I'll just have Rose answer that in the chat. Okay, our first item is our flag salute. If you would all join me and just make sure you have item needed on there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item is our proclamations that we have. And I will ask Director Kim to present our first one.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. I am honored to give the Native American Heritage Month proclamation. The Hillsboro School District knows that during National Native American Heritage Month, we celebrate the rich tapestry of Indigenous peoples and honor their sacrifices, which we recognize as intricately woven into the history of this community and country. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that Native Americans are descendants of the original Indigenous inhabitants of what is now the United States. The Hillsboro School District honors Native Americans who have enriched our heritage and continue to add to all aspects of our society through their generosity of culture and the continued practice of teaching economic, environmental, and cultural sustainability. The Hillsboro School District is committed to engaging in dialogues led by tribal communities around the opportunities and work in which they are currently engaged in the areas of self-determination, sovereignty, and cultural preservation. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim the month of November 2020 the Native American Heritage Month. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing Native American Heritage Month.
Thank you, Director Kim. Our next proclamation will be presented by Director Watson.
Hello. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that public schools are the backbone of our society, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's values of freedom, civility, and equality. The Hillsboro School District knows that by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and a broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that education employees, licensed, classified, and technical support staff and administrators work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. The Hillsboro School District encourages all community members to extend their commitment to public education and to the future of our children by supporting our community schools through the contribution of time and energy. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim the week of November 16th through the 20th, 2020 to be American Education Week. We encourage all community members to join us in recognizing American Education Week.
Thank you, Director Watson. Our next proclamation is with Director Spross.
The Hillsboro School District recognizes that education support professionals are essential partners in the education process. The Hillsboro School District knows that education support professionals provide a safe and healthy learning environment for students. The Hillsboro School District appreciates that education support professionals work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. The Hillsboro School District honors the invaluable and often unsung work behind the scenes, support of teachers in delivering instruction, diverse talents, and tireless dedication to our community students. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim that November 18th, 2020 be National Education Support Professionals Day. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing all education support professionals for their valued contributions to the Hillsboro School District.
Thank you, Director Spross. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of our agenda, so I'm looking for a motion.
Approve the agenda as printed.
Second.
So it has been moved by Jackie and seconded by Martin. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor voting A, nay, or abstain, please mention that in the chat. The yes votes are Martin Granum, Lisa Allen, Mark Watson, Jackie Spross, Sheehan Kim, Yadira Martinez, and myself. The motion carries. Our next item is our consent agenda.
I move that the Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
So it has been moved by Lisa and seconded by. Is there any discussion?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I noticed on BDDH a public comment and BDDH the administrator of the AR that in the public comment policy it says individuals will be limited to 3 minutes, but in the AR it says individuals up to 3 minutes. And I don't know if we want to make sure that those mirror each other or not. Because I know that that has been something that people have said before, is that when they come to make comment is your policy says 3 minutes. And so we had to do that. So I just want to make sure if we mean up to 3 minutes at board discretion or limited to 3 minutes. I don't know.
No, thank you, Jackie. We did attempt to clarify that in the AR where it says board discretion. So why don't we make sure that I think we could still move forward here, but we will make sure that language matches up. So good.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, please vote in the chat. The yes votes are Jackie Spross, Martin Granum, Yadira Martinez, Mark Watson, Lisa Allen, Sheehan Kim, and myself. The motion carries. Our next item is a recess of our board meeting, and we are entering into and convening the local contract review board. The first item on our local contract review board meeting is the review of findings of fact for use of construction manager general contract CMGC with Adam Stewart.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yes, at View Elementary School, one of the projects we have on the docket for next summer, we are proposing that we use the CMGC contracting method, primarily because it's a little more complex than some of the other projects we have going on. We have multiple bid packages. We have some long lead procurement items, and we feel that getting the contractor on board will help us to manage those, the budget and the schedule at Farmington View better. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
If there are no questions for Adam, then I'm looking for a motion.
I move that the Board of Directors, acting in the capacity of the Local Contract Review Board, review and approve the findings of fact supporting a specific exemption from competitive bidding requirements for the use of the construction manager, general contractor process for interior renovations, upgrades to mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and site improvements at Farmington View Elementary School.
Second.
Sorry, I didn't catch the second again.
It was Sheehan.
Sheehan. Okay, so it has been moved by Martin and seconded by Sheehan. Is there any discussion? Okay. There's no further discussion. Please utilize the chat to vote. The yes votes are Martin Granum, Lisa Allen, Jackie Spross, Mark Watson, Yadira Martinez, and Sheehan Kim, and myself. The motion carries. The next item that we have on our agenda is another review and approval of findings and facts for special procurement with Jordan and Michelle Morrison.
Yes, this is to approve our purchase of Google Voice and G Suite enterprise licenses. We're using these as part of our comprehensive distance learning to allow for connection with families using Google Voice for teachers and office staff and some district staff. The G Suite enterprise licenses allow us to use some of the features in Meet and other portions of G Suite like breakout rooms, recording, and some other functions that are now only available using the enterprise license that Google was giving away for free in the spring. Part of this that is necessitated to not do competitive bidding on this is that Google only allows you to have one reseller as part of your domain. And so we have to buy both of these products from the same company. And so that's what we're asking to do here.
I move that the Board of Directors, acting in the capacity of the local contract review board, approve the sole source procurement and exemptions from competitive bidding and authorize the purchase of Google Voice and G Suite for Education enterprise licenses from Amplified IT.
Second.
I saw Martin on there. So it has been moved by Mark and seconded by Martin. Is there any discussion? I did have a question for you, Michelle, just on the, if this is one of those things that can also be possibly reimbursed later if it was used during, no? Okay.
No, this is kind of just become an operational cost for us to do business at this point. So deliberate and a little bit complex, as Jordan discussed when it comes to the bidding piece, but no, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, if there's no further discussion, please vote in the chat. The yes votes are Martin Granum, Lisa Allen, Yadira Martinez, Jackie Spross, Mark Watson, Sheehan Kim, and myself. The motion carries. Okay, and now I'm adjourning our local contract review board meeting and entering into our regular board session. Our next item is our audience time. And before we read our audience comments, I'm going to read our policy. Our audience participation statement, sorry. Public participation in board meetings is governed by policy BDDH. Visitors who wish to speak before the board must complete an intent to speak card available at the top of the HSD website and submitted to the executive assistant to the board of directors, Rose Roman. Comments concerning a published agenda item are limited to its designated place on the agenda. Unless otherwise authorized by the board, comments about non-agenda items will be heard at this time. Commenters should include their name, and if speaking for an organization, the name of the organization. A spokesperson should be designated to us. 3 minutes will be allowed for an individual comment. 5 minutes will be allowed for a commenter who is speaking on behalf of a group. Commenters may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs, but in public sessions, the board will not hear comments regarding any individual district staff member. Commendations involving staff members should be sent to the superintendent. Channels for the board's review of legitimate complaints involving individuals include Board Policy KL Public Complaints. If appropriate, the board chair will connect the visitor with an administrator to receive comments regarding personnel. Any hearing conducted before the board regarding personnel shall take place in an executive session. The board thanks all visitors for their presence and appreciates the input of community members. And with that, I'll move to Beth to see if there's any audience comments.
Yes, we do have one, and I will read that to you. This is from Adele, who says, We have to make safe and responsible plans to get our youngest and most vulnerable students back into the classroom as soon as possible. Distance learning is very difficult for young students who can't yet read or manage their own learning time. While I appreciate the hard work of our wonderful Hillsboro teachers and administrators, it's time to get kids back to school. Working parents cannot manage learning the same way a teacher can. Additionally, Hillsboro School District grounds should be open for children and members of the community to use the tracks, fields, and play structures, just like Hillsboro parks. For many of our neighborhoods, the school grounds are the nearest park. As we enter into a difficult winter of managing COVID risk, having outdoor play space is essential to our community's mental health.
Do we have any other comments, public comments? Okay. Thank you, Beth. Our next item is reports and discussion, and the first one that we have is our October 1st enrollment with Connolly Williams.
Thank you, Erica. So tonight I wanted to kind of give us a framework of how we're going to present the information and go over and highlight some of the key items from the enrollment report on pages 50 and 51. And additionally, at the end, I'll have Adam and Michelle talk a little bit about our enrollment update in that kind of 3 to 4% range, like Beaverton, Eugene, and Portland. Others like Bend and Tiger Tualatin have also increased up to 6% a decrease in enrollment for their districts. So I just wanted you to be kind of mindful of that piece, not only here within Hillsboro, within the state, and then also nationwide, we're seeing reports of a decrease of enrollment within districts. So there's a pattern that is happening outside of our area. And the second piece that I wanted to talk about and point out was the Hillsboro Online Academy, which launched in fall of 2012. You will see an increase of over 800 students between October 2019 and October 2020. And I want you to be mindful of this as well. With that change, we were able to repurpose 18 licensed staff and 14.75 hours of classified staff to support office, educational assistance, and family outreach. And so those were staff members that were currently employed in our school district, and they were moved and transferred to the Hillsboro Online. This has helped save our district and also help support us not having an impact of more increased loss of student enrollment. So that is something I think we should be, in light of all of the decrease of enrollment, there is a little jewel there to help us celebrate. So I think this is also something to be mindful of, is that this Hillsboro Online Academy has afforded our families an alternative instructional model, and they continue to remain in Hillsboro. So that is one thing I wanted to point out to you tonight. The third thing that I wanted to point out to you tonight were student transfers out of the district. You will notice that typically our report is about 1 to 1.5 pages long, but I added some additional information in here that I thought was really critical for you to understand. That I believe that we're close to that 3% threshold for enrollment transfers outside of our district. And this year we've provided more detailed information on those virtual transfers, the homeschool transfers, private schools, and other districts. And you can see all of those numbers listed there. The fourth thing that I would like to talk to you about tonight, that you might have questions about, are kindergarten enrollment and our overall enrollment. So over the last 10 years, we've seen a decrease in kindergarten enrollment due to a decrease in the birth rate. And this is something that matches not only what we see across the county, across the state, and nationwide. Some of the other topics that we've reflected on as we've looked at this data is data that might be looking at housing affordability, looking at poverty, and some of those pieces that impact our enrollment. And also that the requirement for students to be enrolled in school is age 6. So that's another component to be thinking about as you think about that kindergarten enrollment. The last thing tonight is I wanted to give Michelle and Adam an opportunity just to talk about boundaries and Davis demographics. And then I wanted to open it up again for you to ask any questions that you may have.
This is Adam. I can talk briefly about, we have contracted for the last 5 years with Davis Demographics to work on our projections for primarily in those areas where we are anticipating growth and are building new schools. So they're focused right now in looking at North Plains and South Hillsboro to help us determine what we should expect when things return to normal. Hopefully they return to normal at some point. And then also what the revised projections will look like moving forward. And that will be, especially at North Plains, you'll be seeing that play out over the next several months as we begin the boundary adjustment process there. We've been meeting as an internal team over the last 6 weeks or so, and we'll be bringing to you probably at the work session in November a timeline for that boundary adjustment process. Obviously, the COVID loss of enrollment is having an impact. I think we may see that impact in South Hillsboro play out in potentially moving back construction of that South Hillsboro Elementary School by a year, rather than opening in 2022. It would open in 2023. But again, we're gonna let the experts help us with those enrollment projections and determine when is the right time for those projects to move forward.
Thanks, Adam. I'll just affirm what Kana shared about regionally and across the state as far as enrollment, just current enrollment projections and actuals. All districts that I'm connected to are seeing very similar numbers, and the majority of that is the kindergarten students that just didn't start this year. And so knowing that, we'll be able to make some plans accordingly as we prepare them to enter into kindergarten and or first grade next year. So I think that all considered, we are not the worse off, and very thankful to have our in-district online academy, which we were able to not just redirect our current staff and save jobs, but also meet the needs of those families that wanted to go strictly online without them leaving the district completely. So comparatively, we are looking fairly good. So I'm happy to answer any questions alongside Kana and Adam.
Yeah, there are a couple questions. So we have Mark, then Jackie, and then Lisa.
Yeah, regarding the South Hillsboro, Adam, if we delay that, I mean, those houses are going in pretty fast. Do we have capacity at Rosedale, Reedville, Brookwood? How do we split those folks up?
Yeah, right now the entire South Hillsboro area, both the northern area where Reed's Crossing is and the southern area where Butternut Creek is going in, all of those homes are in the Rosedale Elementary feeder.
Okay.
And right now we've got plenty of capacity at Rosedale. And really what we're waiting on is information from Davis. They're working closely right now with the developers down there to give us an idea of how quickly they anticipate the build out happening, and also the numbers of students they're seeing per household. So at this point, I would say, you know, the enrollment as of last March at Rosedale was just over, I think, 400, which means we have capacity for a couple of hundred students. It's down now, obviously. So we're just going to need to determine if we have the capacity at that building to get us through until 2023, or if we need it before. And we're ready either way.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many things be cheaper from one year to the next. So how much more expensive is a school going to be when you build it a year later?
Well, right now the market is really soft, meaning there's a lot of people anxious for work. So we're not anticipating a huge increase in cost. And those budgets that we built for those new elementary schools have been pretty healthy. So we don't anticipate us having a shortfall if we determine we need to wait a year.
Hey, Mark, that's one of the reasons that we reached out to Davis Demographics again to get the very latest information before we have to make that decision. So we hope to have that information by December, and then we'll bring that information and a recommendation to the board. And it really does come down to weighing, do you build a building that maybe has 100 or a couple hundred students in it a year and build the need for that? And that's something that the board's going to have to weigh in on. We have to weigh that against the potential for the increased cost. As Adam said, for the first time since we've moved forward with our bond, we're seeing the market start to soften and to get more bidders and at better rates. So we will share all of the information we have regarding the demography report that comes in and be able to make an informed decision with the board.
Jackie and then Lisa.
So one of my questions is about the increase at HOA of 900 plus almost 1,000 students. I know that we now have an assistant principal there. Is there anything else that we need to do to help Hillsboro Online Academy and their students, especially the new ones, be successful?
Some of the changes that have been made over there, including the move to have some assistance, some temporary help over at the administrative level. Some other things that go with that, and Dale can speak a little more about it, is just some of the teachers that have transferred over there, the instructional knowledge that they have, specifically at the elementary level, has provided resource instructors over there. Dale, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. First, I just want to recognize Audrey and Neville, who really ushered and monitored that entire explosion over at HOA and supported Linda in the transition. We saw a really large growth in elementary and middle, and so I really appreciated her expertise and communication skills in supporting Linda. We've added on additional counseling. Like you said, we've had an assistant principal now, and there were quite a few master teachers that had been working at HOA who really stepped up to provide some leadership for fellow teachers over there. So it's definitely been a group effort, and I appreciate Linda and her team and the technology team that's helped get everybody up and running on Florida Virtual and Canvas and all those components. So Audrey and I continue to check in on Linda and Shannon Freudenthal over there to make sure things are going well. And I think they're up and running. So big, heavy lift, but it seems to be going well.
If I could ask Audrey just to chime in a little bit. Audrey, could you talk a little bit about the increase in elementary and what having Shannon over there has done and some of the hurdles they've overcome? It's such a huge increase in such a short period of time. It would be helpful for people to know just what that's looked like.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, that Shannon Freudenthal was an amazing elementary school teacher actually at McKinney prior to her time being the Dean of Students at Orenco. So she has really stepped in to lead that. Linda is an exceptional secondary teacher with a great background in CAG and science. And so Shannon really has been able to step in the leadership role and really support all things elementary, and with her skill set based on what she knows about curriculum and instruction. And then now she's kind of overlaying that with Florida Virtual and Odysseyware and kind of bringing in nuances of how we extend learning at HOA, how we can support learning through Florida Virtual, and what do we do for standards that we need to kind of beef up in some capacity. Also having some great conversations about what are some supplemental components that we need to add to HOA now that it's larger as well, which is again a whole new beast when you go from, I think they had 250 last year to over 1,000 this year. So that's been just really impressive, actually, the work that they've done to make that happen. And again, like Dale said, the teacher leaders that we have over there, having a school that's been going in that capacity since 2012. We have great people that were there that, having mastered it for the last 8 years, have that ability to lead and support the new folks that we have that are sitting over there as teachers now. So I really feel like, again, bumps along the way, but really amazing considering we've really jumped in our size over there. So just great teachers and great leaders.
Oh, good. Thank you. I had one more question. Sorry, Lisa. The kindergarten enrollment is down over 200, let's say 250, just for a round number. do we expect to have that many more next year? And then along with that goes, I see you laughing, Dale. Along with that is a budget question. If I remember correctly, and budgets are really, school budgets are difficult for me. Michelle's amazing. How is that going to affect the funding that we receive from the state? I guess is just, let's just say it that way.
So there's a lot of conversations, as you can imagine, happening at the state level about that very specifically. And the way the funding formula works is that they have a function called extended ADMW, which basically means if you're in a district that experiences a drop in enrollment, they will pay you off of last year's higher ADMW for 1 year. And so it kind of like smooths out that process. And so if all of the districts move through this in a similar way, then we should.
Should's a big word.
We should be just fine. There's a lot of data to come. I think the challenge is for all districts right now who have lost students to the online charter academies, they're creating a demand for state school funding that hasn't been there before in addition to the districts. So I will be bringing you more information about the budget, but as far as the way the formula works, we'll be funded this year at the same level of ADM that we had second quarter last year.
Regarding our thoughts on, are we going to get the kindergarten kids back? We've had a lot of conversations about that, and Fran and Audrey have been talking to their principals, and our belief is we will get those folks back. We just were talking this morning about a communication plan to get information out to those parents who we know of that held their kids out at this time, and sharing with them what the district policy and procedure is should they, when they enroll next year. What would that process going to get those kids back? It is, Common mentioned this in the beginning of her comments, but it is a very common trend across the state. I mean, over and over again, the group that's missing from schools right now in greater proportion is our kindergarten students, and that holds true from district to district. So really, that's where we are right now. Audrey, do you want to add anything to that?
I agree, completely agree. I think we will get them back. Whether or not they'll be kindergartners or first graders, we'll see depending on where they went, if they went to a charter online or if they were homeschooling. Reminder, the age is 6. So, I mean, theoretically, they can come in as 6 years old and attend kindergarten. And so we will just, I believe they're coming back, though. I really do. And I think we're going to be back where we were pretty darn close by hopefully fall of 2021.
Mike, can I add one thing too? There is that we're hearing from families that the students that chose to, they were enrolled in other places in CDL, say that when HSD opens back up again, in which they can come back into schools, they are planning to return. So we know that those families, and they may have kindergartners and older children, will be planning to come back.
Okay, Lisa.
Is it working? Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a delay. I just typed in the chat. I don't think it arrived that Connor just answered my second question. So I just would say, since I've unmuted, a comment I was going to add, since I'm talking now. We have a kiddo who does concurrent enrollment at HOA, and this is not our first year there as an extra class. But I would say, from the family perspective, given that insane growth, which I was completely unaware of, I knew they were growing, but I didn't realize it was that much. It's been completely seamless and smooth, at least on the family side. And so that's really impressive. So kudos to that whole team.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. If there are no other questions.
All right.
If I could just brag on the HR department for 1 second. This whole experience with COVID and the enrollment piece being up and down, they have over and over again had to adjust numbers and move staff to make this puzzle work. I think the example that we just talked about, the number of staff that have transferred over to HOA, I just appreciate their efforts. It has been a moving target consistently, and time and again they've had to adjust their work. So thanks to Kana and Brian and Saide and the rest of the team.
I am fortunate to work with an amazing group of people. So
Thank you. Our next item that we have on our agenda is with Michelle Morrison in our financial report.
Thank you, Erica. I'm going to echo Kana and just say I am so fortunate to work with an amazing group of people. And my report shares a narrative of some of the hijinks we've been up to over the last month. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about those. Included in the report is our workers' compensation reports, which are probably as expected to be down. Also student incidents reports, which are also down, and we are thankful for that. The last component of my report is the monthly cash flow. And I can answer any questions you might have about that as well. Because this was the end of the first quarter of our fiscal year, it's also including our interest earnings for each of our major funds. So general fund, debt service fund, and the capital projects fund. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Martin has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to give Lynette Kaufman a shout out and the whole team. For those of you who aren't really familiar with the wonkiness of PERS, to make it an understatement, there's a little update there that one of the legacies of the changes to PERS was that they took benefits from people and contributed to this Help Save PERS account, which upset a lot of people, rightfully so. But one of the things they allowed to do was that employees could come back in and top off their account in a post-tax way. Well, that requires a lot of work on the part of the employer to actually implement that process. And so HSD has now implemented that process, and that's a very commendable thing. I don't know that very many public employers have actually done the work to make that happen. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Martin. And to be clear, the folks over at the PERS offices themselves aren't very clear on how they're going to handle those funds yet, but we have been authorized to go ahead, and if an employee elects to contribute post-tax to their individual account, that we will facilitate that. So super weedy, but thank you very much. I will share that with her.
A question from Mark as well.
This question is, so finance, I'll try here. I think it was hot news. I noticed we're still looking for bus drivers. Is that, I guess I'm just really like, are we having trouble hiring bus drivers again?
Yes, I'll let Casey jump in here.
Yeah, we're always looking at forecast and what you can do with the CDL, commercial driver's license, and if you knowing that the rate at which we pay bus drivers and the market out there for individuals with a CDL, we have a pretty transient staff where we train them, they come to work for us, and then another job is available. You know, it could be driving a dump truck, it could be working for TriMet, it could be anything. So we're constantly working through the hiring process, and it takes quite a bit of time, as you can imagine too, with the DMV component now, people not being able to go and process the DMV, it's extended that. So it might be, if we hired a bus driver today, it might be 6 or 8 weeks before we actually get them to drive for us. But yeah, we had done a good job, gotten that number down of bus drivers needed. Really until middle of last year, right when COVID hit, and now we've seen drivers not drop out or do other things or whatever it may be. In our stance now is where we're down a number, just like we have been.
So over the course of COVID, our net drivers have decreased?
Yes, that is true. And that's for a
Okay.
variety of reasons. I mean, if you think some of
Sure.
them are retired individuals and, doing other things. So I guess that could all be incorporated into that. I want to say we're down about 28 again, which isn't as bad as we have been. I know that sounds like a big number, but we, at one point, I think last year we were up in the 40s. So we're posting and hiring again.
But I mean, but at 28, if we were in non-COVID time, we'd be canceling trips or make it difficult to take trips at least, right?
Yeah, it'd be more challenging. I think that's when you get into having office staff potentially have to drive routes once you factor in, sick days and those kinds of things. But it's not out of the ordinary where we are right now. It's just one of those things we keep continuing to fight.
Thanks, Casey. I don't think Beth wants to do another video. Okay, if there are no more questions for Michelle, we'll move to our next agenda item, which is our fall 2020 update with Travis and Casey.
Thank you, Erica. We have some slides to show, and since last Thursday when we posted this packet, there have been some rumors of changing metrics and shifting expectations, and we decided that this is still relevant. What we're going to share tonight is about our process to get back to school, and we'll keep you posted on how things might change in Oregon along the way. So go ahead and click forward, please. One more time. So we're in that spot where we planned for hybrid in the summer and then turned to CDL as the way we re-entered school this year. And so now we're in this phase of planning for when we might be able to bring students back pre-K through 3. Right now, the metrics tell us that we need to be fewer than 30 cases per 100,000 3 weeks in a row. But despite not being able to do that yet, we're actively trying to return to some amount of and also limited in-person for kids. So hoping to give you some updates on that tonight. Please click forward one. One more. The metrics posted this morning, and in Washington County, you can see that our test positivity rate, which needs to be below 5%, is now at 7.6%. And our cases per 100,000 have gone from 45.8 to 48.9 and now 63.6. So we're headed in the wrong direction with our Washington County metrics for returning to school. Please keep going. But we're still talking about how we can move into that stage where we bring back limited in-person instruction and looking forward to bringing students back pre-K through 3. So we'll talk a little bit about both those things right now. Keep going. Right now, we are breaking into our district level blueprint teams, and at the school levels, we're meeting weekly with our administrators and breaking into level alikes to focus at the high school level on athletics and activities, at the middle school level on in-person. Schools are looking pre-K through 3 at what the floor space is like, measuring classrooms, figuring out how to keep 6 feet of distance between students, when and if we're able to come back in at the primary level. Keep going one more, please. Some examples of the stage 2 limited in-person activities that we're working on and some proposed dates would be returning to outdoor athletics and activity. There's a slide for Casey to comment a little more on that in just a second. The target for that would be November 9th. We're working on communications this week, and those communications should be coming out end of the week or beginning of next week. We're working on limited in-person instruction and assessment at Peter Bosco. Please click. And Casey, if you wanted to take a minute and talk about.
Yeah, last week or so, we've really had quite a few meetings trying to figure out how we could bring back session going out to high school or activity-based groups. So we can make sure that we're in compliance with all of the parameters that the district is outlining.
Coming back to school. And the next couple slides are considerations that we're taking into account as we plan. I already mentioned from administrators for how would set up their spaces. Also, we do curriculum planning to transition, even though we've done a lot of work to align our CDL plan with what our brick and mortar plan possible transition. and then developing plans to build classroom culture as we shift. And then developing plans to build classroom culture as we shift. It was mentioned earlier that some of our kinders haven't been to school yet. So how do we do that?
All right.
With protocols. Mark, were you unmuting there?
Sorry.
That's all right. Yep, we looked at this one already. So despite the fact that we can't go back yet to brick and mortar with large numbers of students, the limited plans, and then this final graphic is a 5-week transition template. There's a lot of, if we were to meet metrics in 3 consecutive weeks, that we'd go back that next Monday. What we'd like to do is have a common sense approach that includes transition. You can see there a transition week for staff in the 4th week and a transition week for students and families in the 5th week. We want to be able to plan and do that well. We understand how disruptive it's going to be to staff and students and families. We also will use common sense when we come up against winter break or spring end of the semester. We are not going to be compelled to go back at a time, 3 days before the winter break, for example. We wouldn't do that to ourselves or to our families. So what I wanted to show here is just what a 5-week transition plan would be, and this could slide forward into the future as far as we need it to, just to alleviate some of that. We're automatically compelled metric to return to school on X day. It's just not true. We're going to set up a better transition plan than that. So happy to answer any questions, or if my teammates have anything to add that I've missed, please go ahead.
I got a question from Yadira and then Mark.
So Travis, what happens if during this transition weeks, the cases go up?
I think the second question you're getting after is, so say we make 3 weeks in a row, 4th week we transition, 5th week we feel great about it, and the 6th week or 7th week cases go back up. Right now, according to the guidance, there's a couple different scenarios. One is that my cohort of my classroom has some sort of an outbreak and was to quarantine, and the school could possibly, according to the, stay open while a class or 2 was quarantined. Another situation is where a school has an outbreak and the local health authority tells us that we should go back to CDL at that school. The third situation would be as a county, we get up above acceptable metrics and we're told to go back into that.
Trombones or something like that, like sections?
Yeah, we're not getting into that level of detail, Mark. I wouldn't want you to think about it like a football practice or a band practice. It's more activity related. So, some conditioning, those kinds of things. Band potentially, right, could do some marching things. Again, have
to provide more specific communication. But over the next couple of days, we'll get a simple message or 2, and then look for a more extensive message and timelines at the beginning of next week.
Mark, you had a question?
Yeah, sort of looking at just, trying to predict the future a little bit, looking at those 5-week transition periods, it sort of feels like starting one and then to Travis's point, like we wouldn't have kids go back 3 days before winter break. So it sort of feels like a lot of those, I know some of our neighbors have said we're going to stay in CDL until the start of the 2nd semester, and we've been holding off on making that, hoping that our metrics would improve. But it feels like we're to the point where those 5-week windows are going to line up right with either a winter break or a semester break. So we just by default, we may end up kind of that way, right? It feels a little bit like that.
I think you're absolutely right. I think every day and every week that goes by, it puts us closer to the likelihood of that transition occurring at the end of the semester if the metrics were appropriate to do so. It's pretty clear as we've watched the metrics that we've not got under the necessary 30 in order to make that transition happen. I'll be interested to see what the changes to the metrics are. But like I said, every day and every week that goes by, it definitely gets us closer to the likelihood that we would recommend a semester 2 transition for our students.
Thank you, everyone. Our next item that we have on our agenda, actually, that is all that we have for reports and discussion. Oh, no. Dale, we have one more. Dell, if you would like to present our school resource officers update. Sorry, my page cut off at the.
Yeah, it's on the next page. Flip it over and I'm there. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So I am excited to share the SRO feedback results. Last we had talked, the request was made to get more student voice, which we were happy to get, as well as hearing from more administrators and perhaps our counselors. So I'm here to share this data, and I want to thank Corey Sakamoto and Morgan Quimby for their hard work organizing this and packaging the data. You did receive the data in a board update, not in your board packet. My apologies. I just wanted to make sure the data was correct, and I needed just a little more time. So the fast fact, high school survey was live for 2 weeks. It went out through advisory. All students are in advisory at the end of the day. They responded to the survey. Last time we had a sizable group of kids choose to not reveal their race. And we saw the prefer not to say being fairly high. This time was about 3% of our total population of students. We had 86 administrators and counselors complete the survey, which included principals, assistant principals, deans, and counselors at all levels, K-12. So here is the breakdown on race for our students. And based on the population of our students, we have about 33% are Hispanic, Latinx, and about 44% of our students are white. And the other populations of our students seem fairly representative. So it does look like a representative sample of our kids. For administrators and counselors, we did not do a breakdown of race because it would, we don't have a sizable portion of the counselors or administrators from key groups. And so in order to protect their anonymity, we did not break it down by race. There are a total of 50 administrators, 36 counselors. Over 3/4 of them identify as white. And when we looked at the differences between their responses, admins and counselors by race, it was very similar. So there was a trend in regards to counselors who identified as white, made up more of the strongly disagree or disagree responses for the administrator counselor group comparatively. So in terms of group comparison, so you all know that I love data and there's a lot of it. So I'm going to kind of give you an overview and you can dig in, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions at any time, but we all know that I could play in data for a long time. So basically, I know there's an SRO assigned to our school. We had about 2/3 of our students say yes. Again, one of the things I loved about our Black Village Family Advisory Committee statements today, and indeed as David spoke, I was like, wow, you could probably summarize the SRO survey that we just gave today. But I think this does speak to some need for clarity in some areas, and I think you'll see that in the next couple of slides. So from that, we broke down this question by race. And again, the prefer not to say represents about 3%, 73 students in that category. And those are the ones that disagreed or strongly disagreed mostly. So again, I think it just speaks to us being clear about who our SROs are and what they are doing. So this is about whether or not staff and students were aware that SROs were a resource if there were issues of abuse. So I think most of our administrators and counselors are pretty aware that that is exactly their role in supporting students, and students, for the most part, were aware. Some were not sure. And then if you go to the breakdown by race, again, you see kind of a similar pattern. Our prefer not to say tend to disagree a little bit more than other students. This next question says, I'm likely to tell a SRO if I hear or see someone talking about hurting themselves or others. Again, we wanted to make sure that people saw our SROs as a resource. So we again see a similar pattern here. And when you look at it by race, same sort of thing in terms of strongly disagree. There still seems to be, if you look at that neutral category, that's always a category that I'm like, wow, okay, well, that just indicates to me that we need to do some education about what are their roles and how they can be a resource. The next question is, having the SRO at school makes me feel more safe. We had overall for our students about 50% saying yes and about 30% saying neutral. There was a portion of students that did not feel more safe with the SRO there. And we had about 10% of our counseling and administrators who said no. When you look at the breakdown here, our Asian students and our Latino, Latinx, Hispanic students felt more safe with SROs on campus, and our key groups of Native American, Black, African American, and prefer not to say were less favorable for this category. This I added in here because I just wanted to slide in a slide from the spring. Obviously, I was comparing with our smaller sample. As you recall, we had 196 students that we reached out to or invited in the summer, which is why, of course, you asked for a larger sample size. But if you look here, the group of students that represented our students overall at 2,300 were more favorable than this sample group. In this sample group, we had about a third of our students in 9 through 12 say they did not feel safe. But when we had a larger sample, it appeared that they did not feel that way. I don't know if that's because of the sample or because of what was going on in the summer, or just statistically this didn't represent our student body, but there was a difference there. The next couple slides are about whether or not SROs are involved in school discipline. So our administrators and counselors, about 21% that say, yeah, they are. And for the students, it looks like there's about 30% saying, yes, they are. But still, again, large yellow category, there might be some confusion among students. And there's quite a large disagree and strongly disagree there for certain administrators that they see that that is not the job of the counselor. When you look at the breakdown here, we see that students that are Hawaiian, Native American, and Hispanic identify in those categories feel like SROs are more involved in discipline, and our Black, African American students, and prefer not to say, were less so in that agreement category. The next one is about SROs being mentors for students, or staff and families can access them for help. Again, we're seeing similar patterns. About 15% say strongly disagree or disagree in that category for students. And again, we still have those large yellow bars indicating people aren't sure if they can access them. And the breakdown here, a similar pattern as we've seen in the other categories. Next one, students build strong relationships, or SROs build strong relationships with students. And I appreciated Anna's comment about just how important it was for her son to kind of understand and have that relationship with our SROs. And so I think our students, some of them do have strong relationships, some of them just don't know. And then we had about 14% saying that they disagreed. And our breakdown by key groups, again, kind of a similar pattern. We saw more of our Black African American students who identify as Black African American disagree or strongly disagree, as well as prefer not to say. Quite a few of our Hispanic Latinx students did agree that they had positive relationships with the SROs. And then this is just about parents being comfortable being on campus with SROs. You're probably noticing we're seeing a very similar pattern across the board. I don't know if any of this is earth-shattering what we're seeing. Same thing when you go to the breakdown by race. Kind of 20%, 25% in our prefer not to say group. And then the next one is about unbiased. I know we'd had quite a bit of conversation about engaging with the community. That was something that our parents said in the spring. So here, this was asking our students if they felt like there was unbiased interaction. Students said that they disagreed strongly, disagreed 11% versus the administrators and counselors felt like 8% of the time, 8% of them disagreed with that. And similar thing here, we're going to click through to the next one. Knowing how to contact the SRO supervisors, again, shows some clarity that is needed. We'll click to the next one. Same sort of thing there. And then the final one is really, I want SROs in school. So we had about 14% of our students disagree or strongly disagree, with 47% of them saying that they agreed or strongly agreed. And then that kind of middle box there, again, 30% of them, not really sure. I think if you look over at the counselors and the administrators, you see it more favorable, agree or strongly disagree that they see them as something that they want to continue on in their schools. When you break this down by race, we see our students who are Hispanic, Latinx, white, and Asian more favorable. But again, nothing striking here saying that there are strongly disagrees. Our Native American, Alaskan Native, and our prefer not to say did have larger strongly disagree areas. And then I brought back the slide, next slide, to see how that compared just to the summer work that we had done. And so if you look at the students, we had more students saying disagree, strongly disagree, as well as our parent and our teacher group. And again, that was summer. The populations were not as strong. I think it was Nancy who was talking earlier about she really feels like we need to do some work informing our parents of the roles of SRO and really helping them understand how they can utilize them as a resource, but also support their kids. And I think this is evident in that bar from the parents survey in the summer. And then this is just about if SROs can speak to the families in the language that families need. And so students said 91% of them said yes. Our counselors and administrators, 74% of them said that they were not able to serve the students and the families in the language that we speak. And we know that that is something that we have shared concerns about, that we would like to see more of. And then we'll stop on this slide. There's more slides broken down even more, so you can play. But I think this is where we see the languages in our community that are spoken that we don't currently have the capacity to serve some of our Asian families, as well as some of our Latino families are wishing that more of our SROs spoke Spanish. So I think overall, as we kind of look at this data looks a little more favorable in terms of wanting to continue having SROs present in our schools. But I think as we've heard throughout this time, there still is a real need to have some clarity around what their roles are, both to the students, the parents, and the staff themselves. Some training, I think, is really important. As you read the comments from the counselors and students and parents, there's always some really great things that happen and some areas in which we could grow. So I think that overall, we're seeing that some training, some involvement in the hiring, the evaluation, monitoring of their effectiveness. I think all those things are showing up as things that we can continue to work on, assuming that we continue to have a relationship with the SROs and continue to keep them engaged in our schools. Questions?
We have a question from Jackie. Oh, actually, it was Martin first and then Jackie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dale, is there any, we're very good at, overcoming language barriers on the education side. Can some of those tools be applied to the SRO, communication gap that seems to be evident?
Yeah, I think what happens is when you're in a school and a family needs translation predominantly in Spanish, I mean, that's most of our staff that we have access to. If we need translation services that we can't offer, we access Bruce International or whatever in order to serve families. But usually we would have somebody from counseling or an administrator. I think a majority of our high schools and middle schools have an administrator that speaks Spanish, so they do the translation. I think what I recall reading in the survey is just one of our SROs in particular, it was near and dear to many people's hearts, moved on to a different career. And I think that the community was really missing that connection, that personal connection with that person who could speak to them in their first language. So I think as we continue to work with our Hillsboro Police Department, and I know that's a desire of theirs too, is just to diversify their team and the languages in that the SROs speak.
I guess I'm really speaking more to an institutional approach at this, that there's no way we could expect 8 SROs to cover all the languages in the school district. But I'm reading through a couple of books on SROs just to do my own homework, and one of the things that emerges from this very good book is that the SROs actually need a lot of support from the schools that they serve. The relationships they have with the administrators and the faculty and staff, it really is a make or break in terms of the SRO's success. And I'm just wondering if there isn't maybe a more focused support to the SRO in overcoming any language barriers that might be helpful.
And I also just wanted to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, because translating is a very specific skill set. And I know that even I speak Spanish, but I can't translate a lot of times. Sometimes if it's something very technical, it just requires a very specific skill set to have to do that. And I'm thinking about having like staff members that maybe, you know, are at the front office and all of a sudden they're talking about something totally different and having to translate terms or things that they don't normally do. And like you were saying, Martin, maybe just as an organization, how do we have a resource that, whether it's they call in a contract that we have, where they can, you know, have someone that is a translator that speaks a specific language, and not just for the SRO, but I think just for our whole work that we do.
I think that sounds great. I'm not sure if I'm the best one to speak to that, whether Casey or Olga or someone has some more background. I think we do have access to some resources for translation that we use, but I think that would be definitely something we could put into training with collaboration with our SROs and our administrators to make sure that they know of the resources in order to serve our parents and students. But if there's anything else either you want to add, or anyone?
I just have limited knowledge on this, but it seems like in the past that the school administrator would help facilitate a translator for a meeting or something like that through the district services, through a contractor or something. I know they're fairly rare, and maybe that's something we need to look at and encourage more as we kind of I'm going to call it if we reintroduce the programming and getting our SROs more involved, meeting with some of our parents, that maybe that's something we really try to increase. But like I said, I know it has happened, but you know, not something that I'm frequently aware of.
I'm also sorry. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. If I may just add a couple of things. Obviously, you know, the relationship building it can become much stronger if the staff member or the SRO spoke the language the parents understood. And so given that that is not always the case, our schools do rely heavily on our bilingual assistants. And so we understand that to be an interpreter or a translator, you are required to have very specific training, and it's a completely different skill set, like Erica mentioned. And so to that end, we are every year we provide 2 trainings to our bilingual staff in the buildings, and our central office interpreters and translators, they're language liaisons, that's what they are called. They coordinate the trainings, and we track who has attended those trainings and who hasn't. And so we approach principals every year and we let them know, hey, you have so many bilingual assistants that have not had the training, please send them to the training. And so that's one of the ways that we try to equip our bilingual assistants. There are times when we need very specialized trained interpreters, and when that happens, we reach out to our language community partners and we contract out those services. And so each year we continue to look at ways to improve how we communicate with our families in a language that they understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Olga. You know, one of the things I'm thinking as this comes up is maybe this is a this is an issue that we need to engage in some problem solving with our law enforcement partners on. I'm thinking about there's going to be, oftentimes there'll be an issue that may be highly confidential in those conversations, but having a conversation with law enforcement regarding what assistance do they find themselves needing on a regular basis, and maybe having some type of criteria of which of those incidents would be appropriate to have a staff translator and which might provide a service. So that's a conversation that we can engage in with law enforcement, and then look to memorialize that in an MOU if we end up going that direction.
I think that's a great idea. Jackie, you had a question?
Yeah, there's a slide, I don't know if you can bring it up really quick, about it was SROs involved in the school discipline. And I just remember that I was pretty shocked by maybe I read it backwards. I'm thinking maybe I read it backwards, but I don't know, can we bring it up? Maybe we did and I'm just frozen.
You're not frozen, Dale's working on it.
Oh, okay, sorry. I threw that out there really quickly.
Queen, I think it's number 15. There you go. That was, yeah, maybe Becklin. Do you want the global one, Jackie, or the key group?
Yes, yes. Just the difference between, what the student's perception or reality is versus our administrators and counselors. And I think this is something that's kind of a bone with me, is making sure that this clear line, and I know sometimes it's going to be gray, but that it's just a very clear line. And I think that comes along with the transparency and the accountability that we're all looking at. I really like what Nancy Thomas from Black Village said. We need to make sure that this program serves and protects our children. And so I just want to make sure that stuck with me. I thought that was really great. So this slide was just kind of like, wow, that's slightly different.
Yeah. No, this slide, just because of the sizable number of students who are like, I'm not sure, and then the number who are like neutral, it's like 50% of them, they don't know. Which but there's also quite a few. I mean, 30 compared to like 21% of our administrators and counselors saying, yeah, that's what they do. They do discipline, which could be from experience, but could also just be a perception about what they do. But I think I agree. I think it just speaks to us needing to clarify with all stakeholders, what is the role of the SROs and how are they there to help?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for all this data. It's very easy to read.
I think one thing that I've seen on here in our proposal that we're thinking about how things would change in a MOU or memorializing an MOU, and the proposed changes that we would have for our partners. But I'm interested to see more about what changes are proposed for us. What are we putting on ourselves that we need to improve? And along that is that, back to Jackie's slide that she pointed out, is how are we developing consistency across the use of the SROs in our school district, and our administrators knowing and roles and responsibilities are, so that there is that consistency across the way. And when we go back and do another survey, I think back to Nancy, who mentioned, I think, monitoring it, and I wrote it down, but keeping going after we make these changes, that we have to review and see how we're progressing. And I think if we go back and use these questions or this survey again later and say, okay, how has our knowledge of understanding the SRO program now increased in our student body, in our parents, in our staff, and does that reflect evenly? I think that's one goal to get across, and then also improving on the other questions as well.
Thanks, Erica. That's something we can definitely follow up on. We wouldn't want the proposed changes to the MOU to look like hey, here's a list of things that we need law enforcement to fix, because that certainly isn't the case. I think the example of what's the perception around SROs being involved in discipline, that's more on us than it is on our law enforcement. And there's a number of issues that I think fall into that category. So as we move forward and we start to share what more specifics on that draft MOU, we'll make sure that we also have something that indicates what the responsibilities of the district are moving forward. I think that's a good catch and an easy fix for us.
Any other questions or comments for Dale? Okay. Mike, did you have anything else?
Oh, no, sorry. I was just getting ready for the next item.
Okay. So our next item now is moving. Now we're actually finished with reports and discussion, and we're going to be moving into action items. So our first item that we have is our facilities naming process with Mike.
All right, so exciting to be here tonight. We're at a point right now where we've, for the last several months, Casey has been leading a process with a team of folks that has been discussing the naming of Elementary School 28. And first of all, I'd like to thank Casey and thank the team, the community members that have been working on this. His work and their work has led us here this evening, and so very appreciative of that. As you'll remember, at our September 22nd meeting, we did put the name Otfalati Ridge as a finalist for a 30-day review. And so this evening, we're at a point where we can vote on this. Just as a reminder and as a way to thank some folks publicly, I'm really appreciated that we had David from the Grand Ronde Tribe, Confederation of Tribes, come out and speak with us. And I think that was a great insight for us when it came to understanding what naming this school would mean and the impact that would have. We also heard from Daria, who leads our Native American pack, and we heard the feedback that she had after meeting with her folks as well. So really appreciate that opportunity to have both of those people share. And I think that enriched our conversation. You'll also see a letter of support attached tonight. And that's something that we had requested. We also understood that is more something that we needed on our behalf as opposed to any other group. So we appreciate the efforts that were taken there. So at this point, we are at a place where we're ready to encourage the board of directors to move this selection forward. So I will turn it back over to you, Erica.
I move that the board of directors approve its selection of Otfalati Ridge as the name for ES 28 currently being constructed in North Plains.
Second.
Okay, has been moved by Adira and seconded by Martin. Is there any discussion? I see one comment with Jackie.
I just wanted to take a minute to say that I have voiced my concerns at previous meetings. I still feel strongly that we should not be naming buildings after person or people. This in no way means that our Native community does not deserve to be honored. And I will support my board in the decision and celebrate with them, but I will again be voting no tonight. I just wanted to clarify the reason behind that.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote in the chat. The yes votes are Lisa Allen, Yadira Martinez, Mark Watson, Martin Granum, Sheehan Kim, myself, and no votes are Jackie Spross. The motion carries. Okay. All right, our next item on our agenda is adopting our board goals with Mike Scott.
This is pretty straightforward. Over the last couple meetings, we've had the opportunity to get some input and had some discussion on potential board goals for 2021. Though these have been on review and have been edited to the board's liking. So tonight we are looking to get adoption of these goals at the meeting tonight.
I move that the Board of Directors adopt their goals for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
So it has been moved by Lisa and seconded by Jackie. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, please vote in the chat. Yes votes are Martin Granum, Lisa Allen, Mark Watson, Yadira Martinez, Jackie Spross, Sheehan Kim, and myself. The motion carries. Our next item on our agenda is our notice of intent to purchase with Jordan and Michelle.
Yes, this is our yearly Microsoft licensing that we use for both our users, servers, device operating systems, and software. Purchased on a cooperative agreement with OETC.
I move that the Board of Directors acknowledge the notice of intent to purchase by use of a cooperative purchasing agreement under the authority of the State of Oregon, ORS 279A.1215, permissive cooperative procurements.
Second.
So it has been moved by Mark and seconded by Yadira. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please signify by voting in the chat. The yes votes are Yadira Martinez, Jackie Spross, Lisa Allen, Mark Watson, Sheehan Kim, Martin Granum, and myself. The motion carries. Our next item on our agenda is to appoint our CCAC members.
I move that the Board of Directors appoint the slate of candidates identified during this evening's work session to the open positions on the CCAC as follows. Appoint the following candidates to the 7 two-year positions. Tom Hughes, Lauren Stillman, Isuru, I'm really sorry, Sapatakalorla, I'm really sorry, Christina Stevenson, Patrick McGuire, Emily Gothard, and Gary Jones. Sorry. And appoint the following candidates to 3 two-year student positions. Danny Adzema.
Where do you see? Okay, sorry. I second her motion. And point of order, can we do it in the same motion? I'm so confused.
It was like in the full packet.
Oh, it's in, I'm reading from the full packet. I'm sorry.
I second whatever Jackie moved. Okay.
All right, so it has been moved by Jackie and seconded by Lisa. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank all the applicants. I know there were 2 who didn't get picked up, and I encourage them to continue to support the district and find new and different ways to volunteer. We appreciate everybody's interest in serving in this capacity, and unfortunately, there were only 7 spots to award, but I found everybody highly qualified.
Thank you, Martin. Yes. Okay, all those in favor, please vote by saying vote in the chat. Okay, the yes votes are Yadira Martinez, Jackie Spross, Mark Watson, Sheehan Kim, Lisa Allen, Martin Granum, and myself. The motion carries. Our next item is accept gifts and donations with Michelle Morrison.
Thank you, Erica. As reported, there were no donations in the month of September over the $5,000 threshold here, but we are able to track other smaller contributions, and there are a lot of efforts happening right now to support our schools in the community. So acknowledging that unfortunately no donations over $5,000 to accept this month.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next agenda is our policies first reading with Mike.
Again, pretty straightforward here. We have a number of policies that are going on first reading. You'll see that those are primarily around instruction and students. And you'll see also that the contact cabinet members for each of those, you'll see it's Dale and Travis who have those policies this time around. So I would encourage you, if you have not had a chance to read them, and I don't know if you have any questions right now, but if not, please feel free to reach out to Dale and Travis as we put these on first reading.
Thank you, Mike. Our next item on our agenda is our HCU HEA reports. Do I see Melody or Jill on here already? Whoever's ready.
Okay, I just had to unmute myself. So I'll go first. Hello, so I'd like to start off tonight by saying that I am appreciating the support that we're getting from the district with our information requests and working with us to keep the classified employees working through this pandemic. With the flexibility and the grace of moving our classified to different positions for reassignment, repurposing. And I have a few important things I'd like to share with you tonight, but the classified staff continues to navigate through the CDL model. Even with the many challenges we face at work and home during this time, they continue to show up and solve problems in creative and thoughtful ways. And I appreciate the positive effort and attitude of our classified staff. I would like to give a shout out to the bus drivers that are continuing to do the lunch deliveries, nutrition services that are continuing to prepare those lunches. Many of our bus drivers have taken a hit financially that many of the other departments, SEAs, EAs, they feel it every year where they go up and down. Bus drivers aren't used to it. I found out in a meeting with several of them that many of them have lost $700 to $1,000 with the loss of their hours and overtime with trips and stuff. So they're really feeling the hit, but yet they continue to show up every day with a smile on their face and deliver lunches, make lunches. And we appreciate what they're doing for us and for our kids. So we sent a survey out to the classified staff a couple of weeks ago to get a better understanding through the lens of our classified employees and how they're currently handling this pandemic and what types of support they need from us as a local and as a district. The survey participation was fantastic. I think within the first couple of hours, we had 180 hits, 180 responses. And we had it open for a while, and I think we got just over 600 over the span of a little over a week. And I'll share with you, I will share the questions I'll share the questions that pertain to returning to school in the hybrid model. But some of the questions were, are you concerned about returning to work while the threat of COVID-19 remains? We had 55.5% that were very concerned. I'm afraid of being affected with the COVID-19 virus while at work because of my own health conditions. 39.9% are concerned. I live with someone who is at high risk for COVID-19. 46.3% said they are. And will you return to work in the buildings or drive in a school bus when HSD goes to a hybrid? 13.9% said no because of their health conditions and underlying health conditions, family members that they live with. They just can't take that risk right now. The bottom line is that while some classified staff are prepared to return to work, when we return back to a full in-person model or even a hybrid model, there are still many that have a fear of returning back in person. Many do have compromised immune systems that put them at a greater risk for catching COVID. Many of those are really doing some deep thinking about career choices. They do love their jobs, they love working with the students, and they miss their students, but they do not feel they can put themselves or their families at risk. The numbers are not going down. They are going up. So I'm asking that we as a school district do our part in protecting our students and staff and make sure the metrics are where they should be before we return in-person learning. No matter what tasks are thrown at the classified, I have every confidence that they will succeed at those tasks. Hillsboro School District has a phenomenal classified staff. So thank you. I know we're all working on this together. We're all in this together. I just want to make sure that the classified voices are being heard out there. And that's my job and the other board members for HCU. So we're doing our part. We want to make sure that you guys hear their voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. Jill, are you on here? I think I saw you on.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys
There
hear
you
me?
go. Yep. Hi, Jill.
Okay. Hi. Hi, everyone. Okay, well, I was hoping that tonight I'd be able to share with you that the CDL MOU with HEA and HSD has been ratified. Unfortunately, that is not the case, not because we haven't all tried. We've made progress, albeit slow, and we really appreciate the efforts of HR and OSP to collaborate and problem solve with us in the spots where we got stuck around schedules and the evaluation process. But we just hit a new roadblock with the metrics portion of our MOU. You know, as the governor is considering relaxing the metrics, we feel the necessity to memorialize the 5% testing positivity metric. Our members overwhelmingly told us back in August that they did not feel safe returning to work in person. And today we know that our country's COVID or our county's COVID cases have surpassed the weekly numbers we saw back in August. We also need to revisit the MOU language that addresses the limited in-person instruction, which we now understand will include additional members other than those working in special education. We are looking forward to reconvening the joint HSD-HEA evaluation committee to assure that the indicators of teacher performance will continue to allow educators to obtain proficiency when instructing their classroom using the CDL model. And even though we continue to have workload issues, which we have not included in this MOU, such as the number of advisory classes and the time it takes to complete attendance at the high school, we trust that we will be able to find agreement through labor management with HR and OSP. This has been a new world for all of us, and I know we all want to be back in our schools, but with navigating CDL and the challenges it presents, as well as the possibility of an in-person instruction, our members are overworked and anxious. We need a healthy teaching force to give students the best possible instruction. And I just want to thank you for your continued support of the life and the well-being of our licensed staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, our next item on our agenda is discussion time. And let's start with our student representatives. And I know Ilham had to take off because she had to finish a test. So we will go with Devlin and then Maya.
All right, so I guess I'll go first, I think. I had some stuff I wanted to talk about, but I've already kind of forgotten some, but anyway, so to start with, the survey, I'm really glad that we got that out. I'm also really happy that we managed to get almost 2,300 responses to the survey. It's a much better job. I feel I'm really happy that we got that much involvement from students. Let me think, what else is there? I'm sorry, I can't really think of anything else really. I'm just really happy about the survey. That's all I have for right now. I don't want to waste my time thinking of something else to say.
No worries, Devlin. You can always put it in the chat later if it comes up. Maya?
I just wanted to thank everyone for today's conversations, and I also wanted to thank the Black Village Family Pack. I think it's really important to hear from all members of our community. And,
Thank you, Maya. And then we have superintendent time.
All right, thanks, Erica. I just wanted to take a quick minute and recognize some of the things that we talked about tonight and what this agenda was full of. And if you look at the fact that we started with some equity training for the cabinet members and for the board, I think that's a great step for us. We engaged in a school naming process that culminated tonight that I think was a bold step that that needs to happen, and we need to be more deliberate as as we have opportunities. And I think we demonstrated that tonight. And if I think back to the Black Village Family Advocacy Committee, just having that voice at the table and making sure that we're being purposeful in that, and the information and the insight that was brought to that discussion was incredibly helpful. And then even seemingly a simple thing like making sure that we have representation on board committees through the CCAC and the budget committee. I guess I just want to give a shout out to the staff and to the board, because a lot of people talk about equity. And if you look throughout our agenda tonight, it was demonstrated over and over again that that is just not, those aren't just talking points for us, for this entire group. This really is at the core of who we are and the values that we hold. So just kudos for everybody for making that possible and for the discussions this evening.
Thanks, Mike. And now we have our director's discussion time. And let me just look around on my screen so I can call on you. Okay. Let's start with Jackie, Lisa, and then Mark.
I don't have a lot to say. I appreciate everybody who came today and spoke and gave us information. And I'm very impressed with the cabinet and our staff, our teachers and classified that are making lemonade out of lemons. It's a really difficult situation right now, and I know everyone is doing the best they can for our kids.
Okay. I also don't have a lot to say. I think that this was a great meeting, and I appreciate everyone sharing their thoughts and everyone who made time to come and join us and all the work that went into the information. Dale's presentation, for example, was so efficient, and Michelle's report was so efficient, but that just took hours of work to make it seem so smooth and seamless. And so we certainly appreciate that very much. So thank you. And then just the last thing I'll say is I hope that you all have a wonderful Halloween weekend and be safe. Don't forget to vote no later than Tuesday. And I look forward to seeing everyone in November.
I think I'm next. I just want to express how thankful I am for cabinet staff and my colleagues. Just the equity work the equity training work is supposed to be uncomfortable, and I would say that it felt even a little bit more so today with it being recorded and broadcast on YouTube. I guess I didn't really see how many people were watching at that particular moment, but we've done it sort of in public before, and somebody mentioned room 218, and there's usually not too many people behind us, but now everybody can look it up, and it's there forever. So just a little extra uncomfortable day. So thank you for being part of that journey, and the cabinet and staff for putting that all together. And I mean, a little more than 3 years, maybe. And I don't know that I'm a good person yet, but with everybody's help, I think we're getting better every day. So thanks to all of y'all for being on that journey. And I think Rose probably already knows, but the Los Angeles Dodgers are World Series champions.
I had no idea. I'm focused on the meeting.
Yeah, well, so am I. But
spoiler alert!
Lots of screens in here.
Thanks, Mark. Next up, we have Martin, Qian, and then Yadira.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So despite all the COVID-19 stuff that's going on, there's some annual things that took place in this since we last met too. And I was fortunate to participate in some of those. The Faith Luncheon on the 14th was another grand slam where we engaged with that very supportive community. And Mike and his team, brilliantly, Beth especially, really reach out and engage with our faith community members throughout the community. It was just wonderful. It was every bit as wonderful this year through this kind of medium as it was in the past, where we had the pleasure of sitting at a table and eating a muffin with our sisters and brothers in the faith community. Anyway, big hit, a lot of fun. Just a note to us board members, we're mentoring our student reps, and Sheehan and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Mia earlier this month and continuing that process. I think actually this digital world makes that easier. So I've struggled with that in the past, and Sheehan and I and Mia have gotten together a couple of times now. So I think actually being able to digitally get the conversation going is probably better. Wow, what a showing from Cabinet! Just a grand slam, Mike. They feel quite different than other versions of Coffee Chat. Other versions of chat were much more back and forth, and you could kind of take the temperature of the community that showed up. There'd be tears on many Coffee Chats. The emotions ran so high, people would cry. It's more of a push from us to them in this format. It is what it is. But if you wanted to learn what's going on in the district, those Coffee Chats are an extraordinary opportunity to hear directly from you, Mike, and your cabinet officials. And Beth does a great job of discerning macro questions from the chat box, and those get asked. So I think it's effective, although it feels quite different than previous versions in-person Coffee Chats. We've had two on the 21st and the 23rd, and I'm sure somebody will remind us about the Spanish one that's coming up later this week. Advocacy Committee is back at it. Mark and I chatted with Beth and trying to hone the message, because K-12 in Oregon, you got to go to Salem if you're going to have a complete discussion. I had the pleasure of participating this year in the 5th annual Building Bridges of Understanding Summit. The sub-focus this year was redefining community and public safety partnerships. Wow, I had no idea what I was getting into. It was about a 3-hour event. All 3 DAs from Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah County, all 3 sheriffs from Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah County. It was a who's who of local law enforcement, including the city of Hillsboro, the city of Beaverton, the city of Gresham, the city of Tigard, one of the senior folks from Portland Police Bureau, and members of the faith community. The actual organizing community was the Muslim Educational Trust, but there were well-recognized regional faith leaders from a variety of faiths. Half the discussion was on SROs. For example, the Urban League of Portland was represented and participated and spoke. And in youth, tended to be Portland-centric youth participation, but nevertheless, there were youth voices. It was very rich discussion. It turns out people from the civic groups tended to want SROs out of the schools. And people that have a role in the law enforcement process generally, DAs and sheriffs and police, they wanted the SROs to stay in the schools. And it was very interesting. It was a very rich discussion. So the thoughtful process that we're going through to really discern what's right for the Hillsboro School District, I couldn't be more pleased. I think we should all be very, very happy with the steps we're going through. We're taking the time. We're engaging, we're deliberating it all in a very public way. I do have a lot of thoughts on SROs that I haven't shared. I'm actually reading a couple of books, and they've really informed me on what maybe we should be doing differently regarding the SRO program. I think the district has a huge role to play. These SROs come really largely as individuals into our setting, K-12 system, who's going to partner up with law enforcement. I think there's a lot of work on the K-12 side of that equation. But I'll share my thoughts probably with Mike in my one-on-one and wrestle through what makes sense, and then somehow or other I'll get back to my colleagues on the board what my thoughts are there. There is in Beth's current installment of the Hot News, which is fabulous as always, she mentions the Cascade Alliance for Equity, or CAFE. There's a workshop tomorrow, and unfortunately, I can't attend. I have a hard commitment. It's from 2:30 to 4, It's sponsored by the ESDs. Ours is one of 3 sponsoring ESDs. I asked Rose to send out the link where you can register. And I would encourage one or a number of us to attend. It's likely to be very rich, although I don't know, but it certainly looks interesting. Cascade Alliance for Equity workshop tomorrow. And then as we continue to go through COVID-19, I've been thinking about what my job as a director is. And I go back to an OSBA conference, that webinar, one of the first ones I attended in the COVID. And Jim Green said to us, board members, he said, it seems like you're kind of bystanders in this process. The state comes out with edicts and the districts comply, and where is the board member in this process? And he said, your job as a board member is to support your superintendent. And so I always come back to that in my mind's eye. I might want the playgrounds opened, or I might, have a passion for this or a desire for that. But at the end of the day, I think my job is to support Mike and his team, who by every account are doing a fabulous job of trying to discern what's right for HSD. So that's kind of winding up. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues.
Thanks, Martin. Next we have Sheehan and then Yadira.
Thank you. The only thing I'll add is, I've been taking the time, though I know it's taken a lot more work and coordination from our cabinet members and our staff. I do appreciate, the surveys that have gone out and the fact that we are collecting feedback from multiple parties. And I really appreciated meeting the Black Village Family Advisory Committee tonight. I think their insight and their contributions to this whole process is really insightful. So I really appreciate that we're taking our time in making sure that we're doing what is best and what is right for our students and for our community in HSD. And I look forward to even our conversation with Hillsboro City Council next month, and kind of seeing what this MOU will look like at the end of all of this. So appreciate all of that. Another thing I'll mention is that I know that even in this, even in the distance learning model, it's been hard to make connections, but today I got to virtually, I was FaceTiming with my sister right as my kindergarten niece was entering into one of her class meetings, and she was able to kind of point out all of her friends over Google Hangout and introduce her teacher, and she was, able to still make connections even through this virtual space. And so I do really appreciate all of the effort that our teachers and even our parents are going through, and family members are going through, even during this difficult time, to make as many connections as possible, especially for our little ones that are out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheehan. Yadira.
Okay, I don't have much. I appreciate all the presentations today, and I love hearing from our PACs. I think it's one of my favorite parts of the meetings is when we get to have PAC members come in and talk to them about experiences. I really like the family, instead of they switched out the family instead of parent. And I feel like that is a much more inclusive term, just because families are made up so differently. We have grandparents that raise grandchildren, and sometimes friends or aunts and uncles. So I do really like that they used a family advocacy committee, because it really does. Our students need their families, communities, everyone to make it. So that's just my 2 cents, but that's it. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Yadira. So I had a couple of things. One, I just want to make sure, Maya or Mia, how are we pronouncing your name correctly? Because I've heard it different ways, and now I'm like, wait, am I saying it wrong?
My name is pronounced Maya.
Maya. Okay, got it. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to follow up on the SRO conversation, I think that one thing that we, I guess, haven't really disaggregated or seen common themes is around the comments that were provided from recommendations that we're wanting or changes that we're wanting to make on the program or in the MOU. And I'm wondering if there's common themes that kind of arose in those comments that people provided, to just ensure that we are, that we saw this, we heard this multiple times, this is how we're addressing it. Because I think when we do a survey, we're kind of putting out those questions, but when we get those comments back, that's an opportunity for us to receive that information, kind of like we did earlier today with our Black Family Village. So just something for us to think about. And back to our conversation, our next meeting that we have next month with the city of Hillsboro, I think it'd be us to also have some specific things about what we are doing to address, like I mentioned earlier, the things that we need to work on. I think, especially for our partners, if this is something that we want to continue, that it's a two-way partnership, right? That we're also doing the work and ensuring that we are making changes to our process. The other thing I wanted to mention, as Mark mentioned earlier, this is a very public way of going into our equity journey and learning. And I think that it's part of our leadership role that we just lead by example, and that other people can see themselves in us as well and how we're learning, and that we are all starting at different places, but yet we're here with a common goal to support our students. And I think that is something that we should continue to strive for and bring along our community in this journey that we have. I also wanted just to give a shout out to Olga, because she is sitting on so many committees with me. We were asked to join one, and then they're like, oh, can you also join on this one? And then can you come and do some additional meetings? And it's been a lot. And I just want to say thank you so much, Olga, for your time and commitment and helping to lift up our students and the voices of our families in those spaces, especially at the state level. So I just wanted to give her a shout out I get to see her many times on Zoom. But other than that, I thank you all for your service. I thank you for the work that you do. And I am hopeful that we are navigating these rocky seas this year with a great team. And I will see you all in our next meeting. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.